The city breathes, millions of lights pulse in rhythm below the low-hanging winter clouds. Taxis honk. A couple argues outside a bar on 42nd Street. A homeless man feeds pigeons near a shut-down subway entrance. The whole machine of civilization grinding forward as it always does, indifferent, relentless, and entirely unaware. A news ticker scrolls across a massive digital billboard on the face of a Vought International tower. HOMLANDER votes no on registration ACT. The people need heroes, not BURUCRATS. Rating, 97% approval. Below it, a smaller headline in passing. 7 SUPES neutralized terror cell in Geneva, collateral damage classified. Nobody stops walking, nobody looks up. This is the world of the boys, a world where gods exist, where power was never earned, where the word hero is a trademark and justice is a PR strategy. No one in this world knows what a Shadow Monarch is. No one in this world understands the difference between strength granted and strength forged. That is about to change. Stan Edgar sits in his high-backed leather chair, a cup of herbal tea steaming at his right hand, a wall of security feeds running across his field of view. He is calm, always calm, in the precise way that powerful men learn to be calm, not because nothing frightens them, but because they have trained their faces to pretend. An aide in a crisp suit approaches. Lied. Sir, we're picking up an unusual anomaly reading over Midtown. Seismic sensors are flagging something, but it doesn't match any known profile, not metahuman, not chemical, not. Stan Edgar. Not looking up. Atmospheric. Lied. No, sir, it's the team is calling it a spatial distortion. A beat. Edgar sets down his tea. He looks up for the first time. Stan Edgar. Spatial distortion. Lied. Yes, sir. Stan Edgar. Notify the 7, quiet, no press until I understand what we're dealing with. Lied. And if it's a meta-human? Edgar picks his tea back up, returns his eyes to the feeds. Stan Edgar. Then we brand it before it brands itself. The night is ordinary, tourists with phone cameras, a street performer doing card tricks, a Vought merchandise stand selling Homelander action figures, 2 beat cops leaning against a squad car talking about the game. Then the air tears. There is no sound at first, just a visual wrongness, a shimmer roughly 30 feet above the intersection of 7th Avenue and 46th Street, like heat rising from asphalt, except it is winter and the shimmer is vertical and it pulses. Once, twice, and then Craig. A sound like the sky splitting, like reality itself refusing something it is being forced to accept. People stop, phones go up, the cops push off the car, the card performer takes a step back. The shimmer expands into a tear, a dark, irregular portal roughly 10 feet in diameter, its edges sparking with black and violet energy, its interior an absolute void that seems to swallow the light of Times Square around it. Cold air bleeds through it, a cold that has no season, no origin, the cold of a place between places. And then a figure steps through. Sung Jin-woo lands on the asphalt with the quiet certainty of someone who has walked through worse. Dark tactical clothing, no insignia, no cape, no brand. His face is young, absurdly young for the gravity he carries, with sharp eyes that immediately, automatically begin cataloging his surroundings. He does not look confused. He does not look frightened. He looks like he is taking inventory. The gate collapses behind him with a low hum. Gone. The spatial tier seals itself as if it was never there. The only evidence, a circular scorch mark on the street, and the faint impression in the asphalt where he landed, slightly deeper than a human footprint should be. A beat of absolute silence. Then the screaming starts, people run, phones continue recording, the cops draw their weapons. Hands, let me see your hands right now. Jin-woo looks at them, really looks at them. His expression does not change. He raises his hands, slowly, precisely, the gesture of a man humoring a request he finds roughly as threatening as a request to please use a coaster. His eyes are scanning everything else simultaneously. Inside Jin-woo's perception, something extraordinary is happening. The system, that alien, evolving presence that has been his companion since the double dungeon, since death and rebirth, is struggling. For the first time in his experience, the system does not know where he is. The interface flickers, error codes he has never seen scroll across his internal vision. He has arrived somewhere the system did not anticipate, somewhere outside its map. Jin-woo lowers his hands after 30 seconds. The cops are still shouting. He ignores them, not out of arrogance, out of accurate threat assessment. Their weapons cannot hurt him, but he is studying the skyline, the billboards, the architecture. He is reading this world. One thing he has already noticed. Processed and filed away in the back of his mind, the thing that will shape every decision he makes going forward. The people here are afraid, not of the unknown threat he represents. They were already afraid before he arrived. He can see it in the way they move, the way they kept their eyes down before chaos gave them permission to look. The low-grade ambient fear of a population that has learned to be grateful to its gods and has quietly, collectively forgotten that gratitude under duress is not gratitude at all, it is submission. The NYPD has established a cordon. Blue and red light paints the evacuated square, helicopters circle above, and then a blur of red and yellow, then a streak of ocean blue. A train materializes first, skidding to a stop 30 feet from Jin-woo with that practiced ease, that practiced smile that has been drilled into him through 100 Vought media sessions. Beside him, the deep descends from above, gills flexing self-consciously against the night air, trying to look menacing and mostly achieving confused. A train studies the target, his earpiece crackles. Fastest guy in the world, in and out, subdue and extract, media teams 30 seconds behind you. A train sizes up Jin-woo, young, not especially large, no visible weapon, standing like he's waiting for a bus. All right, mystery man, you picked a bad neighborhood to open a portal in. We're gonna need you to come with us. Jin-woo does not move. He looks at A-Train, then at the deep, then back at A-Train. What he is seeing, what the system is now beginning to partially parse, is extraordinary. These are not monsters. They are not dungeon creatures born of mana and malice. They are humans, or they were humans. Something was done to them, something introduced into their biology, something that altered their architecture without fundamentally changing their nature. He can sense no killing intent from them. He can sense performance. Jin-woo's supernatural strength and speed, biologically altered, not a natural evolution. What was that? Jin-woo switches to English. His English is accented but precise, picked up in the way that someone with his processing capabilities picks up languages, like collecting data. You weren't born with your abilities. A train blinks, a micro-expression, something between surprise and defensiveness, crosses his face before the mask reassembles. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm A-Train, fastest man alive, and you need to come with us, last warning. No. That single syllable lands with the quiet weight of a mathematical certainty, not defiance, not aggression, simply an accurate assessment that he will not be complying with this request. A train moves full sprint, the kind of speed that turns human beings into pink mist if they're standing in the wrong place. He hits nothing. Jin-woo simply isn't there. He has stepped, not run, stepped to the left, and the displacement of air from A-Train's passage barely ruffles his collar. A train spins, already confused. In his years as the fastest man alive, almost nothing has ever dodged him cleanly. This felt different. It felt like the other person had seen him before he moved. How did you? Jin-woo is already moving, 3 steps, controlled. His hand intercepts A-Train's wrist as the supe recovers his footing, and then he applies pressure, not the pressure of brute strength alone, but precision, the kind of leverage that understands anatomy, and A-Train goes down to one knee, his velocity turned against him, his own momentum used as the mechanism of his defeat. 5 seconds, maybe 6. Oh, what the... Jin-woo holds for exactly 3 seconds, enough to make the point. Then he releases, steps back. The deep has been hovering 20 feet up, watching this with an expression that suggests he is reconsidering the entire situation. I mean, I could come down there, or... There is no night. He looks up at the deep, studies him for a moment. You're embarrassed about your abilities. They use you because you're useful to the image and keep you quiet because you're not useful enough. You've internalized that. A beat, the deep stares down at him with an expression like a man who's been punched in a wound he thought was healing. Man, what the, who told you? Jin-woo does not respond. He has already turned away. He walks to the edge of the cordon, past stunned police officers who do not move to stop him. Something about his approach does not invite it, and he melts into the shadows between two buildings. Gone. A-Train is still on one knee, staring at the asphalt. The room is already running. Screens show the Times Square footage from 17 angles, every civilian phone recording, every traffic camera, and the footage is problematic, not because it shows a monster, because it doesn't. ASHLEYBARRETT paces behind a row of analysts, wearing her "this is fine but also nothing is fine" expression, the one she ray. Serves for 3 a.m. situations that could either blow over or detonate. ASHLEY. Tell me we have something, tell me he said something threatening. He put A-Train on one knee, walked away, that's it. ASHLEY. He walked away. Analyst 1. Yes, ma'am. ASHLEY. He showed up through a hole in reality, neutralized A-Train in 6 seconds, and then walked away. Analyst 1. And said something to the deep that made him not come down. Ashley stops pacing. She stares at the frozen frame of Jin-woo walking away. Young face, calm eyes, no brand, no origin, no context. This is her nightmare, not a supervillain, but a wild card. Something that doesn't want anything she can give it. Something that doesn't need the media ecosystem she has spent her career constructing. ASHLEY. We brand him foreign national, unknown origin, unauthorized power use in a controlled metropolitan area. We call him foreign terror meta. Analyst 2. Ma'am, the footage doesn't really support. ASHLEY. The footage shows a foreign unknown who opened a spatial anomaly over Times Square at midnight, evaded our heroes, and disappeared into the city. That's what the footage shows. Frame it. She picks up the phone. ASHLEY. Get me 3 think pieces, 2 security expert sound bites, and a headline that rhymes by 6 a.m. And someone get Homelander up. He's going to want to weigh in on this himself. HOMLANDER stands at the floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of warm milk in his hand, the city spread below him like a board game he invented. He is watching the news feeds. The footage of Jin-woo plays on a loop on 3 separate screens he's arranged to face him simultaneously. He watches A-Train go down in 6 seconds. He watches it again. And again. There's a smile on his face that doesn't reach his eyes. The smile of someone who has been handed something dangerous and is telling himself it's a gift. ASHLEY phone. John, we need your statement by HOMLANDER. Who is he? ASHLEY phone. We don't know yet, that's why we're calling him. HOMLANDER. No, Ashley, who is he? Not what is he, not where did he come from, who is he? A beat. ASHLEY phone. We don't have that data yet. HOMLANDER. What? He watches the footage a 4th time. The thing that is making the smile stay precisely where it is, separated from his eyes, is this. The boy on the screen doesn't look impressed, not by the city, not by A-Train, not by the cameras and the lights and the entire massive machine of American superpowered celebrity that Homelander has been the apex of for his entire life. He looks like he's doing homework. HOMLANDER. That's interesting. Quietly to himself. He turns away from the window, drains the milk, sets the glass down with exaggerated gentleness. HOMLANDER. Tell the media I'm monitoring the situation personally. Use the word personally. And tell them I'm not worried. Make sure they know I'm not worried. Into the phone. ASHLEY phone. Of course. HOMLANDER. Because I'm not. He hangs up. He stands very still for a moment in his enormous empty penthouse, the city's light coming through the glass, and his jaw is very tight, and he is absolutely not worried, and the milk glass is in his fist, and he sets it down carefully. The glass is unbroken. Jin-woo stands on the roof of a warehouse overlooking the East River. The city is pink and gray in the early morning. He has been moving all night, not hiding, observing. He has covered 12 miles of Manhattan and Brooklyn without being detected, staying above sight lines, reading the world he has fallen into. The system interface blinks in his peripheral vision. New data is compiling. Jin-woo has been cross-referencing what the system is feeding him against what his own senses gathered during the night. A picture is emerging, and it is one that sits uncomfortably with him in a way that nothing in the dungeon world ever did. In the dungeon world, the system was clear. Monsters were monsters. The strong survived. The weak were prey unless they evolved, cruel but honest. The rules were posted in plain language. He had read them in blood and risen through them. Here, the rules are different. Here, the powerful were manufactured. The hierarchy is maintained not through earned combat, but through chemistry, through corporate contracts, through the careful management of information. The gods of this world are performance artists, dangerous, yes, genuinely powerful in physical terms, but psychologically deformed by the very process that made them. He had noticed it in A-Train's micro-expression, the defensiveness when his origins were questioned. That is not the reaction of a man who is secure in his power. That is the reaction of a man who knows, somewhere beneath the brand, that what he has was handed to him, and who has built an entire personality around not thinking about that. He thinks of Igris, of Iron, of Baru. He thinks of the Shadow Monarchs that came before him, the inheritance he carries. The price of every level he ever gained. He thinks of his mother in the hospital and the 12 weeks of solitude in the double dungeon and dying for the first time. Nothing about any of that was given. He watches the sunrise. A morning news bulletin plays on a TV visible through a warehouse window below him. He can read the chyron from this distance without effort. Foreign terror meta strikes Times Square, VOUGHT heroes on full alert, public warned to report sightings. A photograph is displayed, a still from the footage, unflattering angle, Jin-woo's face half in shadow, his expression rendered sinister by context and the choice of filter applied. Beside it, a box graphic, foreign terror meta, below it, stock footage of disasters, wars, rubble. Jin-woo stares at this for a very long moment. He has been named before he spoke, categorized before he acted. The narrative was written in the hours he was simply walking and thinking, and the narrative says, dangerous, foreign, threat, other. He files this observation. This is how they maintain control, not through superior power, though they have power, through the management of language, through the control of story. The strongest tool in this world is not a fist or a laser or a body that cannot be harmed. The strongest tool is the narrative written about you before you can write one yourself. Jin-woo. They're afraid of what they don't own. Very quietly to himself. He looks at his hands, flexes his fingers slowly. He thinks about Igris kneeling at the end of their first battle. He thinks about the monarchs, about what it means to command shadows, to build an army from the dead, to carry the weight of an inheritance that no one handed you. He thinks about what a dungeon is. And then he looks at the Vought tower, visible even from Brooklyn in the pale morning light, its logo prominent against the brightening sky. He tilts his head. He has walked through dungeons that were entire worlds. He has faced monarchs whose very existence threatened reality. He has died once and come back not as the person he was, but as something the system decided the world needed. And he is looking at a corporation. The system prompt that had been flickering all night suddenly stabilizes. A new designation appears, one the system has constructed from scratch, from incomplete data, from the patterns Jin-woo fed it through the night's observation. Jin-woo reads this. He reads it again. The system has never recommended social integration before. He almost finds this funny. Almost. Jin-woo has found a temporary base. Nothing elaborate, a cleared floor in an empty warehouse, a duffel bag of essentials he assembled during the night by methods that did not involve payment. He sits with his back to the wall, eyes open, running through what he knows. Why didn't he kill A-Train? The question is worth interrogating seriously. A-Train attacked him. By the rules of the dungeon world, by the rules of every contest he has ever fought that constitutes hostile engagement, the system would not have penalized a lethal response. His own instincts, sharpened by years of fights where hesitation meant death, would have supported it. And yet, he had held A-Train's wrist with a fraction of his available force. He had applied precisely the leverage necessary to end the engagement without ending the man. He sits with this choice and examines it the way a surgeon examines a wound, not emotionally, but clinically, trying to understand what the decision reveals about his own calculus. Reason 1: incomplete information. He does not yet know what this world is, what rules govern it, what consequences killing a high-profile publicly known figure would produce. In the dungeon world, the aftermath of combat was clear. Here, he had spent one night and was already being branded by a media apparatus he barely understood. Killing A-Train in his first 6 hours would close doors of intelligence that might be critical. Reason 2: they are not the disease. A-Train is not the source of whatever is wrong with this world. He is a symptom. He is a product. Killing the product without addressing the production system is not a solution, it is noise. If he killed every enhanced person Vought pointed at him, the corporation would simply make more. That was what corporations did. That was, in its own way, what the monarchs did. Reason 3, and this is the one he examines most carefully, because it is the least tactical and the most honest. They don't know what they are. A-Train was manufactured. The compound was introduced into his body as a child. His entire identity, the speed, the brand, the fame, was constructed around an ability he did not choose, did not earn, and cannot separate from himself without ceasing to exist as he understands himself. He is not a villain in the sense the word requires voluntary malevolent choice. He is a person who was made into a weapon and has spent his entire life performing competence, so the people who made him don't put him down. Jin-woo knows something about being remade. He knows what it is to have your identity rebuilt around power you didn't ask for. He knows what it is to look at the system that rebuilt you and not be certain whether it is your salvation or your captor. He knows the architecture of that confusion from the inside. He is not going to kill a confused weapon before he understands who built it and why. He is going to find the source. A television news van rolls through the street outside. The reporter's voice drifts up through the cracked warehouse windows as she records her piece to camera in front of a still photograph of Jin-woo from last night's footage. TV reporter OS. Vought International has confirmed their response teams are actively pursuing what officials are calling the Foreign Terror Meta, an unregistered, unaffiliated metahuman who appeared via Spatial anomaly over Times Square just before midnight last night and engaged in a hostile confrontation with A-Train and the Deep before disappearing into the metropolitan area. Vought's Chief Communications Officer Ashley Barrett issued a statement this morning calling the individual's presence an unacceptable violation of American airspace and a direct threat to public safety, and promising that Jin-woo stops listening, he has what he needs from that. Chief Communications Officer. A superhero organization has a Chief Communications Officer. He turns this over in his mind. In the dungeon world, the powerful were self-evident. Their authority announced itself. Nobody needed to communicate the threat of a monarch. But here, the most powerful organization in the country employs more people to manage its narrative than it employs people to manage its violence. That tells him something about where the real power actually lives. It doesn't live in the speed or the strength or the laser eyes. It lives in the story. And to clean this world, not merely to neutralize its threats, but to actually repair whatever fundamental wrongness is operating within it, he will need to understand that story first, dismantle it from the inside, find the people who wrote it and understand why they wrote it that way. Violence, when it comes, will be surgical, earned, final. But it is not time for violence. Not yet. HOMLANDER stands behind the podium, American flag to his left, Vought logo to his right, full uniform, perfect posture. The room is packed with journalists, cameras, lights. He smiles. HOMLANDER. I want to reassure the American people. I know you're scared, I understand. An unknown individual appeared in your city last night, and that is frightening. And I want you to look at me right now and hear this directly from me. I'm on it. Applause. HOMLANDER. Whoever this individual is, wherever they came from, they need to understand something very clearly. This is America, and in America, there is only one first responder that matters. There is only one protector that the people of this country trust, and that protector. He pauses. The pause is 3 seconds. It is a trained pause, a practiced pause, the pause of someone who has been told by 3 different coaches that 3 seconds of silence in a speech creates a sense of gravitas that 2 seconds cannot achieve. HOMELANDR is standing right here. More applause, louder. Homelander smiles, and the smile is perfect, and his eyes are doing something completely different from his mouth, and none of the journalists in this room have ever been trained to look at the eyes. On a rooftop 4 blocks away, Jin-woo watches the press conference on a phone he is borrowing from a broadcast van's wireless signal. He watches Homelander's hands, he watches the jaw, he watches the 3-second pause and the calculation behind it. He has fought monarchs. He has faced the monarchs of destruction, of white flames, of iron body. He has faced beings of absolute certainty in their own supremacy, beings that could not conceive of a world in which they were not the apex. And what he is looking at right now is something he recognizes, not the power level, but the psychology. Homelander believes, on a level beneath argument, that he is what he claims to be, not because the evidence supports it, because he has never been given the opportunity to find out otherwise. Jin-woo puts the phone down. He does not feel contempt, he does not feel anger. He feels the particular quality of alertness he feels before a difficult dungeon, the heightened attention of someone who understands that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the highest power level. The most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing to lose. And a man whose entire identity is constructed around being necessary, around being the protector, the apex, the only relevant force in the world, is a man who will tear everything down before he accepts evidence that he is not those things. Jin-woo knows this because he knows what it feels like to stand at the bottom of everything and be forced to build yourself into something the world didn't have a name for yet. The difference is that Homelander was placed at the top and has never had to build anything. The difference is that everything Homelander was manufactured by people with agendas. The difference is that Homelander, despite all his power, is not free. And he doesn't know it. Billy Butcher sits at a kitchen table with a beer, watching the news coverage of the Times Square incident on a laptop. His jaw is working. His eyes are sharp beneath the general affect of a man who makes a performance of not being affected by things. Hugh Campbell is leaning on the counter, also watching, also trying to look like he's thinking rather than afraid. So he's not with Vought. Butcher, obviously. And he put A-Train on the ground in, 6 seconds, without killing him. Butcher, what? That's weird, right? If you could take A-Train in 6 seconds, why wouldn't you? Butcher, because he's not finished looking around yet. Huey looks at him. What? Butcher, still watching the screen. He's not done looking around. Butcher takes a long pull on his beer, sets it down. Butcher, you want to know what the most dangerous thing in any situation is, not the loudest thing, not the biggest thing, not the thing coming straight at you. He taps the paused frame of Jin-woo walking away from the camera. Butcher, it's the quiet one who's been watching you for hours before you realized he was there. A beat. So what do we do? Butcher leans back, cracks his knuckles, thinks. Butcher, we find him before Vought does, and then we figure out if he's an asset or a problem. And if he's both. Butcher almost smiles. Butcher, then he's our kind of person. The warehouse is dead space. 50 years of industrial abandonment have left it stripped of everything except rust, echoing concrete, and the persistent smell of motor oil and damp. A row of fluorescent lights runs along the ceiling, 3 of them dead, 2 flickering at the rhythm of something barely holding together, the last 2 burning steady and cold. The effect is not darkness exactly. It is something worse than darkness. It is visibility that punishes. Billy Butcher stands in the center of the space with the posture of a man who learned early that appearing smaller than you are gets you killed and has been compensating ever since. His hands are in his jacket pockets. His jaw is set. He studied the footage 47 times. He knows where the entrances are in this building, where the exits are, and what the structural weaknesses look like if things go wrong. He has a vial of compound V in his left pocket, because if there is any chance this person is dangerous beyond measure, he wants the playing field even. He will not take it, but he wants the choice. Hughie stands 10 feet behind him and slightly to the left, which is where Butcher put him, and is doing the thing he does when he's scared that he's still working on disguising, which is holding perfectly still and breathing very carefully through his nose. Is near the far wall. Frenchie has the high ground, second-floor catwalk, rifle in hand, though he's been told not to use it unless he sees something clearly hostile. Kimiko is by the east entrance, invisible in her stillness. They've been here 27 minutes. Then the shadow in the southwest corner of the warehouse shifts. Nobody moved into that corner, it was empty. The cameras they set up covered it, and yet the shadow shifts, the way water shifts when something moves beneath its surface, and then Sung Jin-woo steps out of it as if he simply stopped choosing to be somewhere else. Frenchie. Via earpiece, barely audible. He was here before us. Jin-woo looks at Butcher, Butcher looks at Jin-woo. The silence between them is 20 full seconds. Neither man speaks. Both are doing what men of their particular formations do when they encounter a new variable. They measure it, quietly, with a specificity that is not casual. What Butcher sees, a young Korean man, small by the standards of the people Butcher usually has to fight, dressed plainly, standing with a quality of stillness that is entirely wrong. It is not the stillness of someone waiting, it is the stillness of someone who has already finished waiting and moved on to deciding. His eyes track the room not with the scan of someone looking for threats, but with the calm sweep of someone confirming that the threats they already catalogued have not moved. What Jin-woo sees, a man built from anger and loss who weaponized both because he didn't survive long enough to do anything else with them. A man who hates the powerful for specific personal reasons rather than general ideological ones, which makes him more dangerous than a revolutionary but also more predictable than one. A man who would sacrifice anything for what he believes is right, including the people who trust him, and who has not yet fully come to terms with that. Jin-woo files this. Butcher, you knew where we were. Jin-woo, you set 4 perimeter points, your shooter arrived first, you swept the building at 9:15. Butcher, and you walked in anyway. Jin-woo, yes, Butcher, because you're not worried about the gun. Jin-woo, I'm not worried about the gun. Another silence. Butcher pulls his hands out of his pockets slowly, showing they're empty, which costs him something, but is also the correct move and he knows it. Butcher, all right, you know who we are. Jin-woo, you're the people Vought wants dead more than they want me dead, which means you've been working against them longer and with more specific knowledge. You're not heroes, you're not law enforcement, you're operational. Butcher, close enough, what do you want? Jin-woo, I want to understand the production system, not the product, where the compound comes from, where it goes, who decides which humans it enters, who profits and by how much, the complete chain. Butcher, and then what? You going to walk into Vought Tower and start flipping desks? A pause. Jin-woo tilts his head approximately 3 degrees, the gesture of someone genuinely considering whether a question deserves a literal answer. Jin-woo, probably not desks. Huey makes a sound. It is not quite a laugh. It is the sound of a laugh that decided at the last second to be something else. Butcher studies him for another long beat. Then he nods once, the way men who don't like trusting people nod when they've decided that not trusting someone is the more dangerous option. Butcher, you share what you find, everything, and you don't move against a target without telling us first. Jin-woo, I'll tell you what I do after I do it. Butcher, that's not the same thing. Jin-woo, no it isn't. The fluorescent light directly above Butcher flickers once, twice, then holds. In the half-second of its flickering, something happens in Jin-woo's eyes, not a change of emotion, but a clarification of one. He is not being difficult, he is being precise. He is not going to make promises about sequencing his actions around someone else's comfort level when he doesn't yet know what those actions will need to be. Butcher knows this, he doesn't like it, he accepts it. Butcher, right then, welcome to the bloody mess. Getting here took 11 days, not because the security was too strong. Jin-woo passed through it like smoke through a screen door, using the shadow step in places where no camera could distinguish a moving darkness from a stationary one, but because he needed the complete map first. The floor plan, the shift rotations, the override sequences. He needed to understand this place before he entered it, the way you understand a dungeon before you clear it, not just where the corridors run, but what the corridors are for. The room is cold, the kind of cold that means precision. White surfaces everywhere, floors, walls, ceilings, all of it demanding sterility, demanding that nothing organic be here that wasn't placed here deliberately. Long metal shelving units run floor to ceiling in triple rows. Security glass panels separate each section. And behind the glass, in precise modular containers, glowing with a soft bioluminescent blue that has no natural analog in the world Jin-woo comes from. Compound V. Hundreds of vials, possibly thousands. He doesn't count immediately, he scans first, the way the system taught him to scan, looking for the architecture of the storage, the labels, the production codes on each container. Everything here is organized by batch number, by date, by what appears to be a recipient classification code he will need the boy's data to fully decode. He picks up a vial, holds it up to the sterile overhead light. The blue glow is beautiful, that is the first thing he thinks. Then he corrects, it is engineered to be beautiful. Everything about this compound, the color, the glow, the clean geometric lines of its container has been designed to look like a miracle, to look like something holy, something a parent would be grateful to give their child, something a nation would thank a corporation for developing. Design as manipulation, aesthetic as consent. System analyzing unknown compound, synthetic origin confirmed, biological compatibility, broad-spectrum human application. Mechanism, radical cellular reconstruction via targeted genomic activation. Detected secondary components, behavioral modification agents, suppressive, loyalty pathway pharmaceutical overlay, long-term neurological dependency markers. Assessment, this compound does not merely grant power, it creates dependency. It restructures psychological architecture alongside physical capability. Users are not enhanced, they are owned. Jin-woo reads this slowly. Owned. He turns the vial in his fingers. The blue light pulses once softly, as if performing for him. He thinks about A-Train on one knee in Times Square. He thinks about the Deep's face when Jin-woo told him he'd been made to feel small so he'd stay small. He thinks about Homelander at the press conference, the jaw, the hands, the 3-second pause, and the specific quality of fragility that lives underneath absolute power when that power was given rather than built. They don't know, most of them genuinely don't know what is in their blood, what the compound did to the architecture beneath the speed, beneath the flight, beneath the laser eyes. They don't know that the god they became came with a leash sewn into the genome, invisible and unbreakable, held by a man in a suit on a high floor of a building, with its logo visible from space. His hand tightens on the vial, just slightly. Shadow tendrils fine as spider silk, dark as the space between stars, extend from his fingertips across the metal shelving unit, reading its contents, not destroying it. He is not here to destroy, he is here to understand. The shadow passes over batch record after batch record, absorbing data the way only something that has transcended the boundary between the living and the dead can absorb it, completely, immediately, without fatigue. He finds the civilian files. Not the registered supes, the civilians, the people who were administered the compound without knowledge, the infants dosed in hospital nurseries whose parents signed what they believed were standard newborn screening waivers. The food supply contamination trials from 1971 through 1989 in 17 American cities. The targeted community programs in low-income neighborhoods rebranded as nutritional supplementation initiatives. He stands very still for 60 seconds. This is the thing that changes the temperature of his assessment, not the exist. In Sev Sup's power was always going to emerge in some form in any world, and power emerging is not inherently evil. Not the experiments, the dungeon world was built on cruelty encoded as system, and he made his peace with that when he chose to transcend it rather than be consumed by it. This, the children, the non-consenting, the people who never had the choice he was at least given, the choice to enter the dungeon or stay outside it, the choice to fight or retreat, the people whose architecture was rewritten without their knowledge so that a corporation could have a product pipeline. He sets the vial down precisely, gently. He takes a photograph of every file with an instrument butcher gave him and walks out the way he came. The facility does not know he was here. The security logs show nothing. The camera feeds show nothing. Only a slight residual coolness on the shelf where the vial rested for 3 minutes would be evidence of anything, and no one will check that shelf tonight. The rain has been falling for 4 hours. Not dramatic rain, the kind of rain that is simply the sky's indifference made physical, that does not care about what it washes away or what it obscures or what it reveals. The alley smells of dumpster runoff and cold concrete and the specific cleanser Vought uses on their operational vehicles. There are 2 such vehicles parked at the alley's mouth. Black, no plates visible. The target is a supe who goes by the Vought registered name Groundbreaker. Power set, seismic generation, he can fracture concrete, cause localized tremors up to 6.2 on a modified scale, and punch through reinforced steel with the force of a geological event compressed into 2 fists. He is built like a weapon that learned to walk. He is also, per the files Jin-woo extracted from sublevel 4, personally responsible for the execution of 11 civilian witnesses from a Vought contamination case in 2019, people who had evidence, people who were about to go to a Senate committee, people who were alive on a Tuesday and found as accidents by Wednesday. He didn't do this because he wanted to. He did it because Vought told him to, and the behavioral modification overlay in his compound V dosage made refusal feel like suicide. Jin-woo knows this distinction. He is not ignoring it. He is also not allowing it to be sufficient justification for 11 families still waiting for answers they will never be given through conventional channels. There are 2 Vought handlers with Groundbreaker tonight, men in tactical gear, earpieces, sidearms that will do nothing relevant to this situation. They are there to manage the asset, which is what Vought calls its supes when they are being deployed for extralegal operations, assets, resources, units. Jin-woo has noticed this language. It is the language of a system that ran the dehumanization so thoroughly that the dehumanization stopped needing to be enforced. The target walks into the alley at 1:47 a.m. because the boys gave him a reason to, a carefully constructed text trail suggesting a witness who needed to be found before morning. The bait was MM's architecture, clean and professional, the kind of thing a person builds when they've been doing this long enough to know exactly how much truth to leave in a lie. Groundbreaker enters, looks around, the alley is empty. Then Jin-woo steps out of the shadow beside the east wall. Groundbreaker. Who the hell are? Jin-woo moves. What happens in the next 40 seconds is a kind of violence that this world, a world with established superhero combat protocols, with televised fights, with the vocabulary of capes and collateral damage, has never quite seen. Because it is not a brawl, it is not a display. It is a clinical process applied to a problem with a measurable solution. Groundbreaker hits first, a seismic punch that cracks the alley wall 12 feet deep and turns the asphalt beneath into a ripple of crushed stone. Jin-woo isn't there when it lands. He is already inside the soup's guard, moving with the economy of someone who has fought things that could end the world and learned that footwork is the first language of combat, the one underneath all the others. 3 strikes, 2 blocks reversed into redirects, a throw that uses Groundbreaker's own seismic mass against him. The soup hits the far wall, hits it hard enough to leave an impression in brick, slides down it. He doesn't stay down, the compound V will not allow it, not at this stage. He rises, slower now, and his eyes are the eyes of a man who has never not been the strongest thing in a room and does not have the vocabulary for what is happening to him. The 2 handlers are running. Jin-woo ignores them. They will be handled differently, not tonight, not violently. The data they carry on their phones will be extracted by the boys within the hour through methods that leave them alive and confused. Jin-woo and Groundbreaker stand in the rain. What? Groundbreaker. What are you? Jin-woo. Quietly. I know about the 11, I know they told you to do it. I know you did it anyway. A beat of absolute stillness. The rain falls. Groundbreaker's breathing is ragged. His expression moves through something, starts as defiance, passes through confusion, arrives at a place that is too raw and complicated to have a clean name. He looks at the ground. Groundbreaker. They said if I didn't, they said they'd, my family is. Jin-woo. I know. He does know, he read the files. He knows about the leverage, the family dependency clauses embedded in every registered soup's contract, the quiet threat that underlies the public adulation. He knows that Groundbreaker is simultaneously a perpetrator and a victim of the same institution, which is the precise configuration of person that is hardest to know what to do with. What he does is not what the dungeon world would have required. What he does is not full mercy. What he does is finish it quickly, with the minimum force necessary for permanence, and with one hand pressed to the fallen man's chest in the moment before the end, a gesture that is not ritual in any way Jin-woo could articulate, but that costs him something to make, and that he makes anyway, because 11 families deserve to know that somebody came. The alley is silent, the rain continues. Jin-woo stands still for a long moment. He does not look satisfied. He does not look victorious. He looks like someone who did a necessary thing and is giving it the weight it deserves before moving forward. Then he moves forward. Hughie is watching from the alley entrance through a scope. He has seen violence before, has committed it, has survived it, has been fundamentally altered by it. He thought he understood what this operation would look like. He does not understand what he is looking at now. From the body on the alley floor, something is rising. Not gas, not energy in any conventional photonic sense. It is darkness, but darkness with intention, darkness with direction, the kind of darkness that has weight and will. It lifts from the still form in ribbons and spirals, moving upward in patterns that recall smoke but are slower and more deliberate, the way a language is more deliberate than a sound. Jin-woo stands at the center of it. His eyes have changed, the irises burning with a deep violet-black luminescence that exists in no visible spectrum Huey can name. His right hand is extended, open-palmed, and the rising darkness is flowing toward it the way iron filings flow toward a magnet, not dragged, but drawn, as if the darkness recognizes something in him and is choosing him. The shadow condenses, the ribbons and spirals compact, tighten, accelerate their rotation, and then in the space behind Jin-woo's left shoulder, something coalesces. A figure tall, the same general proportion as the man who was Groundbreaker, but rendered entirely in darkness, not as a silhouette but as a presence, substantial and dimensional, with a faint structure of armor visible in the way light bends around it. Its eyes ignite, 2 points of cold violet-white fire, steady as stars. It turns its gaze toward Jin-woo. And then, and this is the thing Huey will spend 3 weeks trying to describe to MM, without ever quite finding the words, it kneels. Not the kneel of a soldier following a command, the kneel of something that has been recognized, the kneel of something that has been, in some way neither Huey nor any other person in this world has a frame for seen. Jin-woo looks at the shadow figure for a long moment. System new shadow soldier integrated, designation pending. Compound V biological matrix absorbed and repurposed. Seismic capability partially transferable. Note, host, this entity retains residual consciousness markers at 3.7%. This is anomalous. Shadow soldiers from this realm may carry greater psychological complexity than standard dungeon origin shadows. Proceed with appropriate acknowledgement protocol. Jin-woo reads this and is quiet for a moment. He looks at the shadow soldier. The faint violet eyes look back at him. In their cold light, if you look carefully, and Jin-woo always looks carefully, there is something, not thought exactly, not the complex architecture of the human consciousness that Groundbreaker once ran, but something residual, something that was too deeply structural to be erased even by the transformation. Something like relief. He does not name the shadow yet. He will name it when he understands it better. In the dungeon world, he learned that naming is a form of relationship, and relationship is a form of responsibility, and he does not take that lightly. He simply extends one hand, palm downward, a gesture that means, stand. The shadow rises, and then steps back and dissolves into the shadow of the wall, gone as quietly as water going underground, present only as the faintest depth in the darkness, the sense T. The alley's shadows are a little more occupied than they were a moment ago. Jin-woo lowers his hand, turns, walks toward the alley entrance. He finds Huey pressed against the wall outside, pale and trying to look like he hasn't just witnessed something that rearranged his understanding of what death is. What was that? Jin-woo. Reinforcement. Does Butcher know you can do? Jin-woo. Butcher knows what he needs to know. He walks past Huey and into the rainy street. After a beat, Huey follows, because that is what Huey does. He follows, and he worries, and he is more observant than people give him credit for, and what he observed tonight he will carry very carefully and very quietly until the moment it becomes relevant. The room was designed to communicate power even under pressure. Floor-to-ceiling digital displays showing global asset maps, operational dashboards, real-time news aggregators. A boardroom table long enough to seat 22 with chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Holographic market indicators float above the table's surface in real-time. Vought stock, asset performance, subsidiary tracking, the precise financial pulse of an empire. This morning, the pulse is irregular. Stan Edgar sits at the head of the table. His tea is untouched and cooling. This detail, if anyone in this room were calibrated for it, is the most alarming indicator of the morning's events. In 12 years of crisis management, Edgar's tea has never gone cold. He has always had the mental bandwidth to drink it. ASHLEYBARRETT is standing at the display wall, presenting. She looks like a person who received news 3 hours ago that she is still metabolizing. ASHLEY. Groundbreaker is confirmed dead. The handlers reported a single male attacker, consistent with the Times Square individual. No footage. He disabled the cameras in the operational zone before the engagement. The handlers are currently being debriefed. Their accounts are. She pauses. ASHLEY. Consistent with each other, which means they both saw the same thing. Edgar. Very quiet. Which was. ASHLEY. Groundbreaker was neutralized in under a minute, and then. She pulls up the single piece of footage they have, a partial capture from a damaged handler phone, 16 seconds of shaky vertical video, partially corrupted, mostly audio with 3 clear frames. On the display, the alley, the figure of Jin-woo backlit by nothing, standing over something on the ground, and behind him, barely visible, only if you're looking for it, only if the corruption in the file opens just right, the outline of something rising. The room is very quiet. Edgar. What is that behind him? ASHLEY. We don't know. Edgar. Has the analysis team. ASHLEY. They've been running it for 90 minutes. The consensus is. She stops again, takes a breath. In 12 years with Vought, Ashley Barrett has said a great many alarming things in a great many briefings. She has delivered the news of asset deaths, PR catastrophes, congressional investigations, whistleblower scares, and at least 4 incidents that required the deletion of entire data wings. She has a particular face for this, controlled, professional, the face of someone managing information as a discipline. This morning the face is having trouble. ASHLEY. The consensus is that the biological remains of the asset were repurposed, absorbed, transformed into a secondary entity that appears to be under the attacker's direct command. The holographic stock indicator above the table shows Vought International down 3.2% in pre-market trading. Some institutional investor somewhere has already noticed something. Not this, they can't know this yet, but the market, which is the most sensitive fear detector humanity has ever built, is smelling something. Edgar. He took the asset. ASHLEY. That appears to be what happened, yes. Edgar picks up his tea, looks at it, sets it back down. Edgar. He is not building an opposition movement. He's not looking for political leverage. He's not trying to expose us. Edgar. He's dismantling us. A beat. Edgar. Asset by asset, evidence source by evidence source, starting from the operational tier and working up. ASHLEY. Quietly, like he knows the organizational chart. Edgar. Yes. He stands, straightens his jacket. Edgar. Tell Homelander he has authorization to engage, full spectrum, no liability parameters. Tell him this is personal. He picks up the tea, drinks it, ice cold now. Edgar. Tell him someone is finally worth his time. It is quiet down here. Jin-woo sits on the floor, back against the concrete wall, eyes open but not looking at anything in the room. He looks the way he often looks when the Shadow Army's collective perception is feeding back to him, slightly absent from the present moment, present everywhere else. Kimiko is across the room, watching him. She has been watching him for 11 days now. not with suspicion, Kimiko's relationship. With suspicion is practical, she reserves it for things that have already demonstrated untrustworthiness, but with the specific quality of attention she applies to things she doesn't have adequate language for. She is, of all the boys, the least alarmed by Jin-woo. She knows what it means to be rebuilt by something that did not ask your permission. She knows what the interior of that reconstruction looks like from the inside, and she recognizes the architecture. In the corner of the basement, a shadow. A shadow that is slightly more solid than the others. That occupies its corner with a kind of awareness. That, if you look at it directly, almost looks like a figure sitting with its knees drawn up, in the posture of something that used to be a person who sat that way when they were thinking. Kimiko signs at Jin-woo. Not words exactly, she uses ASL as a base but has long since developed her own extensions for concepts ASL didn't anticipate. She signs, the shadow, is it watching? Jin-woo glances at the corner, then back at Kimiko. Jin-woo. Yes. She signs, watching what? Jin-woo. Everything. They maintain awareness differently than they did before, the ones from this world. A pause, she signs, does it remember being him? Jin-woo is quiet for a long moment. He looks at the corner again. The shadow's eyes, those two faint cold violet points, are looking back at him. Jin-woo. Fragments, not continuity, more like the emotional residue of continuity. It remembers what things felt like, not what they were. She signs, that sounds like grief. Jin-woo says nothing for a while, then. Jin-woo. In my world, when I first started building the army, I told myself they were just resources, assets. I used the same word Vought uses. He stops, the shadow in the corner shifts slightly, not movement exactly, but the way a room shifts when the air pressure changes. Jin-woo. Idris showed me that was wrong. He was the first. He was a boss monster, the kind of thing that exists to be the final test of a dungeon. He should have been nothing after the fight, but he wasn't nothing, and I had to decide what I was going to do with that. Kimiko watches him, signs, what did you do? Jin-woo. Quiet. I gave him a name, and I stopped calling the army resources. He looks at the shadow in the corner of the basement, at the faint violet eyes, at the shape of something that used to be a person who did terrible things for terrible reasons and ended in a rainy alley in the South Bronx. Jin-woo. Quietly, directly to the shadow. I haven't named you yet, I will. The shadow soldier's eyes glow very faintly, then steadily. Then it inclines its head just slightly, just the suggestion of acknowledgement, and goes still. Kimiko watches all of this, signs nothing for a while. Then, finally, I understand. Jin-woo looks at her, for the first time in 11 days, something very small and not quite a smile, but structurally adjacent to one moves across his face. Jin-woo. I know you do. The giant screens of Times Square are running regular programming, a Vought corporate special, Heroes Among Us, the 7th year in review, when the feed interrupts. Not a technical interruption, not a hacker takeover. Something stranger and harder to categorize. The feed simply, for 47 seconds, shows footage that nobody at Vought authorized and nobody at the network understands the origin of. It shows the interior of sublevel 4. The compound V vials, the batch records, the civilian dosage files, the production timelines going back to 1971, the names of the 17 cities, the nutritional supplementation initiative documentation, the newborn screening waiver language, all of it moving past in a clean, deliberate sequence, not a data dump, not a panic broadcast, a presentation, organized with the specificity of someone who wanted it understood, not just seen. It lasts 47 seconds, then the Vought special resumes as if nothing happened. The crowd in Times Square has stopped walking. 4,000 people in a 12-block radius, all of them looking up at the screens, and the sound that rises from them is not screaming and not cheering. It is something in between, the sound of a large group of people updating their understanding of something important in real time, the sound of a cognitive revision happening at scale. Phones go up not to document the spectacle they're already searching, cross-referencing, the names of the cities, the dates, their own cities, their own dates of birth. A mother in Cleveland opens a news app, reads a headline she doesn't understand yet, and puts her hand over her mouth. A man in a bar in Atlanta sees his city's name on the list and very slowly puts his beer down and looks at his hands. A teenager in Los Angeles screenshots the footage and sends it to 47 people in under a minute. A senator in Washington wakes to 3 simultaneous calls, and for the first time in 6 years. A Vought related in action picks all 3 up. Edgar stands at his window. The city below him has changed. The financial district's real-time market feeds, the ambient data he monitors from this window like a doctor monitors a patient's breathing, are showing a move. A big, sustained, panicked move. Vought stock is in freefall 7% and accelerating in after-hours trading. His phone is not ringing. The people who would call him at this moment already know better than to call him, because what they would say would not change what is already happening. He is very still. He is doing the thing he does best, which is stripping a situation of everything irrelevant, the noise, the emotion, the panic of other people, and identifying the precise architecture of the threat. The information release was not random. It was strategic. 47 seconds, long enough to be recorded and spread, short enough to avoid a clean injunction under emergency media law. The specific selection of files, civilian dosage, not soup program files. The thing most likely to generate genuine public outrage rather than the abstract fear of superhero programs the public had already mostly accommodated. He didn't expose them to destroy them yet. He exposed them to destabilize, to make the population unreliable, to begin the slow work of pulling the narrative out of Vought's hands by making the narrative too large for Vought to contain. Edgar turns from the window. Edgar. To the room, empty except for one aide. Where is Homelander? Lied. He's watching the coverage, sir. He's... Edgar. Tell me his affect. The aide hesitates, then... Lied. He looks happy, sir. Edgar is quiet. Edgar. Soft final. That's the most dangerous thing you've told me all week. Homelander stands at his window, a smile on his face that finally reaches his eyes. Below him, Times Square is alive with fear and noise and the specific beautiful chaos of a public that has just been told something true. He watches the crowd, he watches the panic. He watches the way the giant screens, now back to the Vought Spatial, now showing his own face in an archival clip, are being ignored by 4,000 people looking at their phones. Nobody is looking up at him. He should find this enraging. The machinery of him was built to find this intolerable, and there is an edge of rage in him, yes, that clinical background radiation of violence that is always running just beneath the surface. But above it, brighter and more immediate, excitement. Something is happening, something real. Not a press conference, not a coordinated narrative, not a threat assessment from a committee of people who are afraid of him but not afraid of anything they can't file a report about. Something actual. Something happening in the world without anyone's permission or approval, without Vought branding it, without Ashley managing it, without Stan Edgar's quiet, invisible hand shaping it before it reaches him. Something that could be a fight. Homelander's entire life has been performance. He has been performing strength, performing heroism, performing the narrative of American supremacy while the thing underneath the performance, the thing the performance was always supposed to feed and never does, has been getting hungrier for something it cannot articulate. He doesn't want to be worshipped. He doesn't want to be feared. He wants to be matched. He wants to find out what is on the other side of his power. He wants to know what he is when the thing across from him can see him clearly and doesn't flinch. He has never had that. Homelander. To the night, to the city, quiet as a prayer. Come on, show yourself. 6 miles away, in a basement that smells of concrete and machine oil, Jin-woo's eyes open. He has been listening to the city's reaction through the Shadow network. 47 seconds of careful truth, carefully timed. The beginning of the end of the narrative, not the end itself, not yet, not without more groundwork, not without understanding Homelander's full psychology, not without knowing what Vought's last resort protocols look like when everything else has failed. But the beginning. He closes his eyes again. Outside, the city is afraid. Outside, the city is angry. Outside, the city is doing the thing that cities do when the thing they were told to trust turns out to be the thing they should have feared. It is making noise about it, because noise is what people do when they need to make the size of a thing visible before they know how to address the thing itself. Jin-woo lets the noise wash over him, catalogs it, files it. And in his chest, beneath the strategic architecture of everything he has been building, something very quiet and very old, older than the system, older than the dungeons, as old as the moment he woke up at the bottom of the double dungeon with nothing but the will to survive, turns over once, like a stone turning over in a current. What? It is not satisfaction. It is the feeling that precedes the final descent into a dungeon's deepest level. The feeling of knowing, I know what this is now, I know what it needs. The feeling of it is almost time. What unfolds in these pages is not simply a fight. It is an ideological collision made physical, the meeting of two philosophies about what power is, where it comes from, what it demands, and what it is worth. Homelander has never been tested in the way that word actually means. He has been opposed, maneuvered around, threatened in committee rooms and congressional hearings, and in the quiet corporate machinations of the man who made him. But he has never stood before something that looked at his full power and said, I see you, I understand what you are, and it is not enough. Sung Jin-woo is not coming to fight a god, he is coming to show the world that there was never a god here at all, only a child with power he did not earn, standing in a room where no one was permitted to tell him the truth. The studio has been dressed for this specific occasion with the precision of a military operation. American flags, more of them than usual, 3 more than the standing count, enough that a viewer at home would feel the weight of national invocation without being able to articulate exactly why. The lighting is warmer than standard. The particular amber tone that ASHLEY has determined reads, as authority combined with approachability in the 18 to 34 demographic, that Vought's polling team has identified as the most volatile in the current news cycle. Homelander stands at his mark, full uniform, perfect posture. The flag at the precise angle the graphics team has tested in 17 different configurations over the past 6 weeks since the public narrative started fracturing. Ashley is in his earpiece. He has told her 3 times he doesn't want her in his earpiece. She is in his earpiece. ASHLEY. When the prompter says foreign threat, pause 2 beats. We want the gravity to land before you continue. And John, the smile. Remember, the smile is for the camera, not for Homelander. I know what the smile is for, Ashley. The teleprompter runs, the cameras count down, and Homelander does the thing he has been doing for 15 years, he becomes. Not performs, becomes. That is the specific genius and the specific horror of what Vought built in him. He is not acting when the cameras come on. The cameras are the only time he is fully real to himself. The manufactured self and the actual self collapsed into each other so long ago that the distinction no longer has clean edges. My fellow Americans, over the past weeks you've been frightened. You've been shown things, real things, manufactured things, things taken out of context by someone who does not share our values, who did not come through our door, and who has made it very clear that the rules the rest of us live by do not apply to him. He pauses 2 beats exactly. I've seen the footage, I've seen what this individual, this uninvited foreign element, did to A-Train, to our people. I've watched him move through this city like it's his city, like you are his people. A beat, the warmth in his voice drops exactly 1 register, not gone, adjusted, like a dial turned to the frequency of controlled fury. You're not. The broadcast cuts away, back to the anchor. The Chiron reads, Homelander issues direct challenge to foreign meta, calls for immediate confrontation. In an apartment in Brooklyn, Butcher watches the broadcast with his arms crossed. Butcher. He wants the audience, he wants the cameras, he doesn't know what he's inviting. Does Jin-woo know? Butcher looks at the corner of the room, where a shadow that arrived 3 hours ago and has not left is sitting with the particular stillness of someone who is in 2 places at once. Butcher. He already knows. The shadow says nothing, but it shifts, the faintest acknowledgement, the vocabulary of something that has moved past the need for spoken confirmation. Jin-woo is sitting with his eyes closed and the broadcast playing on a phone beside him that he stopped watching 7 minutes ago because he has already extracted everything useful from it. What he extracted? One Homelander framed this as patriotism versus invasion because that framing requires no evidence and produces maximum emotional response. It is the most defensible narrative structure available to him, which means Vought's communications team is operating from a place of diminishing options. 2. Homelander deviated from the teleprompter 4 times in a 2-minute broadcast. His handlers put words in his mouth and he changed them in real time. He is not a fully managed asset anymore. He is exerting his own narrative will. This is either because Vought has given him more latitude or because he is taking it without permission. 3. And this is the one Jin-woo sits with for a long time, turning it over like the compound V vial in the lab. Homelander sounds like a man who wants to be stopped. Not defeated, not killed, stopped. There is a quality in the broadcast performance, beneath the constructed authority, beneath the warmth. H to Fury register shift of something pushing against its own containment. He is publicly challenging Jin-woo not only because Vought instructed it. He is doing it because the challenge is the only door he can see that might lead somewhere real. Jin-woo opens his eyes. System host assessment query logged, optimal engagement parameters for Homelander confrontation. System recommendation, public venue, high visibility. Absolute constraint on Shadow Army deployment until psychological phase complete. Allow Homelander to dictate initial terms. Cede narrative advantage of location in exchange for psychological advantage of posture. He must believe he chose the battlefield. Jin-woo reads this, nods once. Jin-woo. He did choose it, he just doesn't know what the battlefield is yet. 23 broadcast cameras, 14 aerial drones, 6 Vought media units, 3 independent networks who received tip-offs through channels that Jin-woo arranged with deliberate care, because a confrontation without witnesses is only an event, a confrontation with witnesses is history. The Great Lawn has been partially cleared by NYPD under Vought authorization, a quarter-mile radius of empty grass between the 2 figures who now stand at its center, separated by approximately 60 feet. Around the perimeter, thousands of people who will not leave despite the cordons, because the thing happening here has the gravitational pull of something that will only happen once. Homelander floats approximately 6 inches above the grass. This is deliberate. He is not standing on the same ground as the person across from him. He is performing superiority before a word is spoken, before a movement is made. Sung Jin-woo stands on the grass, his feet are planted. He is not performing anything. He is waiting. Homelander. I have to say I appreciate you showing up. A lot of people in your position would have run. Jin-woo. I'm aware of that. Homelander. Any last words for the cameras? The people at home would love to know what you're thinking right now. Jin-woo looks at him for a moment. His expression is the expression of someone checking a calculation. Jin-woo, you've never been tested. Homelander. Big talk from someone who put A-Train on one knee. Hey moves. Homelander hits with the full force of a being who has never needed to calibrate his opening strike. He hits with everything, because everything has always been enough, because the concept of pacing a fight exists only for people who need to pace a fight, and he has never been one of them. The air cracks, the grass beneath both of them tears away in a perfect radial burst from the impact point. The cameras catch the shockwave rolling across the lawn like a visible wave through reality, the trees at the perimeter bending hard away from the epicenter. Jin-woo absorbs it. Not deflects, absorbs, the shadows around his body, the dark halo that has been his ambient signature since the system evolution in his home world, the shadow skin that exists at the exact threshold between his physical form and the monarch's domain, take the impact and distribute it through a dimension that Homelander's physics cannot follow into. He moves 2 steps back, that is all. The crowd at the perimeter makes a sound, not cheering, not screaming, the specific sound of a large group of people simultaneously revising a fundamental assumption. Homelander's laser vision. Twin beams of red-white annihilation that have melted aircraft, cauterized the hull of naval vessels, bored through reinforced bunkers at 3 kilometers. They track Jin-woo with the precision of a targeting system that has never missed at this range. The beams find the shadows. The shadows consume them. Not block, consume. The darkness around Jin-woo's form draws the laser energy inward, the way a black hole does not so much deflect light as simply claim it, and for a moment the air between them shimmers with the visual paradox of tremendous energy disappearing into something that looks like nothing at all. Homelander stops, stares. Now Jin-woo moves. He crosses 60 feet in a time that has no clean unit of measurement, not the blur of A-Train's speed, which displaces air and leaves a visible wake, but something quieter and more absolute, the movement of something that does not fully occupy the space between origin and destination. He is there, then he is somewhere else. The physics in between are not something the cameras catch. The first strike lands on Homelander's side. It is not a maximum force strike. Jin-woo is not attempting to end this in the first exchange. He is attempting to establish a data point. What does Homelander do when the pain is real and unexpected and coming from a direction he did not anticipate? What Homelander does is, he goes sideways through the air 40 feet, smashes through a tree at the lawn's perimeter, and comes out the other side with an expression that has never appeared on his face on camera before. Confusion, real confusion. The confusion of someone whose model of the world has just failed a test it has never failed before. He recovers, charges back. The exchange that follows lasts 4 minutes and is recorded from every angle simultaneously. Later, analysts and commentators and security professionals will spend 600 hours reviewing it frame by frame. What they will conclude unanimously is this: Homelander is fighting a war. Jin-woo is conducting a diagnostic. Every strike Jin-woo lands is in a different location, at a different angle, with a different force coefficient. Not random, patterned, the pattern being the systematic mapping of Homelander's physical response at different impact vectors. He is not trying to defeat him yet. He's studying him the way the system taught him to study a boss monster in its first phase, cataloging capabilities and responses before committing to the finishing sequence. The shadows do their work. When Homelander destroys one, and he does destroy them repeatedly, the laser vision tearing shadow soldiers apart in blasts that scatter dark matter in wide arcs, 2 more rise from the ground at the far edges of the fight. Not aggressive, flanking, learning. And each shadow that falls in this fight, Jin-woo does not replace from nothing. He replaces from what Homelander gives him. Every destroyed shadow is reformed from the darkness the fight itself generates. The stronger Homelander fights, the more raw material the shadow domain receives. The crowd has stopped making sound. They are simply watching. 4,000 people in absolute silence, phones raised, recording something that none of them have the framework for yet, but that all of them understand in some pre-rational register is going to require a new framework entirely. A woman near the cordon on the west side, a nurse, watches Jin-woo absorb Homelander's full-power strike and step back twice, and her face goes through something complex. She has spent years being managed by the same ambient fear that everyone in this city carries, the background radiation of knowing that somewhere above you, at all times, there is something that can end you whenever it decides to. She watches the shadows move and she thinks, he's not fighting to win, he's waiting. And she feels, for the first time in a very long time, something that is not quite hope, but occupies the same anatomical location. A kid in the back of the crowd, 12 years old, Homelander backpack, has been a true believer his entire conscious life. He watches his hero charge across the lawn for the 4th time, watches the charge redirected, watches Homelander emerge from each exchange looking less certain than he did before. And the kid does not cry. He does something more interesting. He lowers the backpack off his shoulders and holds it in his hands and looks at the logo on it for a very long time. Butcher, watching on a phone from a position 2 blocks east, his jaw tight, seeing something he recognizes, the particular economy of a fighter who is doing the minimum necessary because the maximum isn't needed yet, who is letting the opponent exhaust his own confidence, and thinking, with a feeling he has only experienced twice before in his life, this is already over. The only question is how it ends. 7 minutes. Homelander has been in 7-minute fights before. He has been in 2-minute fights and 30-second fights, and one fight that lasted 11 seconds from the challenger's first move to Homelander's final one. He has a comprehensive internal library of what 7 minutes of maximum effort combat feels like, and what it looks like on the other side. What it looks like universally, consistently, without exception across everything he has ever fought, is damage. His opponents get damaged, they bleed, they slow. They make the particular expression of someone whose body has started calculating what it can afford to lose and has begun to subtract. He looks at Jin-woo. Jin-woo is not blighting. He is not slow. He is not making the expression. What he is doing, and this is the thing that has been growing in Homelander's chest for the last 90 seconds, the thing that started as curiosity and has passed through discomfort and arrived at the edge of something he does not have a clean name for, is moving differently than he was 3 minutes ago. Not worse, better. Subtly, incrementally, in the specific way that something improves when it has been accumulating data and has had sufficient data to begin integrating conclusions. The dodges are cleaner, the redirects are faster. The angle of each counterstrike is precisely calibrated to Homelander's most recent revealed vulnerability rather than his general profile. He is adapting in real time, to Homelander specifically, in the middle of the fight. System combat adaptation rate, 340% above baseline. Host is integrating fight-specific data at full. Monarch capacity, Homelander physical parameters fully mapped. Structural vulnerabilities identified, primary, temples, optical nerve convergence behind laser origin point, secondary, lower thoracic compression above compound V reinforced skeletal layer, tertiary, the psychological dependency on audience validation creates 0.3-second micro-hesitation when crowd response is ambiguous. All three are actionable, awaiting host directive on escalation sequencing. Homelander hits again, a three-strike combination that has never failed to finish a fight. Designed over 15 years of experimental combat, perfected against the toughest things Vought ever put in front of him in private. Jin-woo slips the first, parries the second using Homelander's own extended arm as a redirecting lever, steps inside the third, absorbs it on the shadow skin, and delivers a single precision strike to the spot behind Homelander's right temple that the system flagged 4 minutes ago. Homelander's vision whites out for 1.3 seconds. He loses altitude. His feet touch grass for the first time since the fight began. He stands there on the ground, and his eyes are full of something that processes very slowly in a person who has never needed to process it before. His face goes through it in stages, the way a person goes through grief stages: denial first, the physical disbelief that this impact registered the way it did, then the flash of anger, then something beneath the anger that is quieter and more fundamental. It is fear. Not performed fear, not the controlled deployment of fear as a tactic, the involuntary kind, the kind that lives in the nervous system below the level of decision-making and communicates directly from the body's threat assessment layer, the layer that does not consult the ego before sounding its alarm. It lasts 1.7 seconds, then the face reassembles. But the cameras caught it. 23 broadcast cameras, 14 aerial drones, and an estimated 47,000 phone cameras from the perimeter crowd. In 1.7 seconds of unfiltered biological truth, every single one of them captured the same image: Homelander, standing on the ground, feeling something he has never felt before. And Jin-woo standing across from him, watching the fear happen with an expression of precise, unhurried recognition, not satisfaction, not contempt, but the particular quality of acknowledgement that a person carries when a diagnosis they made weeks ago has just been confirmed by the patient's own presentation of symptoms. HOMELANDR. What are you? Not a challenge, a genuine question. Jin-woo. I'm someone who had to earn it. A beat. Jin-woo. You never had to, that's the difference. That's always been the difference. Homelander looks at him. Then something shifts in his expression, not the fear returning, but something that was underneath the fear, something that has been underneath everything for a very long time, trapped under the manufactured confidence and the smile and the 15 years of performing invulnerability for cameras. It surfaces for a moment, just a moment on his face, before the fury rises and buries it again. It looks for that one moment like grief. Like the grief of someone who was told they were chosen, and spent their entire life performing that chosenness, and never once asked what they would have been if they had simply been allowed to become something on their own terms. Jin-woo sees it, he sees it the way he sees everything, completely, immediately, without the noise of emotion interfering with the signal of observation, and he files it, and what he does with that filing will determine not how this fight ends, but what the ending means. The lawn is unrecognizable. 300 yards of the Great Lawn have been reconfigured by 22 minutes of combat at this scale. Craters, torn earth, trees at the perimeter bent or broken, the grass itself stripped away in wide arcs around the impact sites of major exchanges. The beautiful geometry of New York's most famous open space has been rewritten. The cameras are still running. The crowd at the perimeter has not moved. They have, if anything, compressed forward against the cordon, not because they want to be closer to the danger, but because the thing happening here has the quality of a historical event, and the human animal has a deep-wired instinct toward the presence of historical events even when, especially when, the event is terrifying. Homelander is bleeding, a thin line from his hairline above the right temple. The crowd notices this before he does. Homelander never bleeds in front of cameras. He has a physical self-healing rate that makes minor combat wounds irrelevant in the time frame of a typical engagement. But 22 minutes at this intensity, against an opponent who has been specifically targeting the identified structural vulnerabilities with increasing precision, has outpaced the healing rate by a slim but visible margin. His hands go up and touch the blood. He looks at his fingers, then at Jin-woo. The fury that follows is not a tactical decision. It is a reflex, the reflex of a man whose entire identity is constructed on the premise of invulnerability and who has just seen that premise publicly contradicted. He comes at Jin-woo with everything, full speed, full laser, a sonic scream that has never been deployed in a public fight before because the collateral damage is too significant to risk on any target that doesn't justify it. The sonic scream blows out every window within 400 meters. It hits the Shadow Army and scatter-destroys 15 Shadow soldiers simultaneously. It hits Jin-woo. It does not blow him backward, it staggers him. There is a distinction. Jin-woo takes the full force of the scream on the shadow skin, his feet leaving furrows in the earth as the pressure pushes against him, and he plants and he endures it, and his eyes through the maelstrom of sound and darkness and displaced air are absolutely steady. He looks at Homelander through the scream. The scream falters, not because of physical opposition, because of something in Jin-woo's expression, the expression of someone who has decided. Jin-woo closes the distance in the silence after the scream. What happens next is 12 seconds. Later it will be dissected more thoroughly than any 12 seconds of human event in recorded history. Strike one, the temple again, harder this time. The right side of Homelander's vision collapses. He swings blind on the left side and hits nothing. Strike two, the thoracic compression point, a sound like a structural failure in a large building. Homelander folds forward, not from pain exactly, but from the nervous system's immediate emergency response to a structural event it has no protocol for. Strike three, not a strike, an arrest. Jin-woo catches Homelander's descending weight, one hand on his collar, one beneath his arm, and holds him there, upright, facing the cameras, facing the crowd, and the support is not gentle exactly, but it is controlled, which is something that brutality would not have been. He is not letting him fall. He is making a choice about how this is seen. He is making the world watch. Jin-woo holds Homelander upright, facing the cameras, facing the 47,000 phones, facing the 23 broadcast feeds going live to an estimated 300 million simultaneous viewers across 14 countries. He does not speak, he does not need to speak. What is being communicated does not require language. What is being communicated is this: I could end this at any moment. I have been able to end this at any moment since approximately minute 4. I have chosen not to. I am choosing not to right now in front of everyone with precision and intention. And in choosing not to, I am demonstrating something about the nature of power that 15 years of Vought media programming could never demonstrate, that the most powerful being in this confrontation is not the one who cannot be stopped. It is the one who chooses when to stop. Homelander is breathing hard. His face is a documentation of a psychological event that no human being has ever had the capacity to produce in him before, and this, more than the blood on his temple, more than the structural failure in his chest, more than the stagger from the sonic scream that did not land the way sonic screams are supposed to land, this is what will be in the history books. The expression on Homelander's face. It has been called in the subsequent analysis many things: fear, shock, grief. A breaking, the most precise observer, a psychologist in Oslo who will publish a widely circulated paper on the footage 7 months later, will call it the first genuine encounter with one's own contingency. The first time Homelander has understood, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived, physical, irrefutable fact, that he exists conditionally, that the reason he has not been ended is a choice made by something else, that the world he believed he stood above has, all along, contained the capacity for his undoing, and that the capacity has now arrived. He looks at Jin-woo. His eyes are doing something they have not done publicly since the archival footage of his early Vought testing at age 7, footage that no living person except Stan Edgar has ever seen. They are doing the thing eyes do when a person does not know what to do and has run out of responses that don't require them to acknowledge that they don't know. HOMELANDR. Why aren't you? Jin-woo. Because I want you to understand something first. A beat, the crowd at the perimeter is not breathing, the cameras are. Jin-woo. You were made, I was made too, but what made me required something from me, required everything from me, more times than I could count. What made you required nothing, and you spent your entire life mistaking that absence of cost for proof of worth. Homelander says nothing. Jin-woo. The people watching right now, they're not watching you fall. They're watching themselves understand something they were never supposed to understand, that the thing above them was always conditional, that the God was always a product, and now they know. A very long silence, 30 seconds that are the longest 30 seconds in the broadcast history of this or any other network. HOMELANDR. They'll hate me. Jin-woo. They already knew, they've been afraid too. He releases Homelander. Steps back. And the world watches Homelander stand on his own, no longer held up by the other man, standing under his own power on the ground he has been brought to, for the first time, as just a man who happens to have extraordinary abilities rather than a god who deigns to pretend at humanity. The cameras capture this. And the crowd at the perimeter, after 32 seconds of silence, not coordinated, not organized, with the beautiful instinctive rhythm of a large group of human beings arriving at the same feeling simultaneously, begins to change. They do not cheer for Jin-woo, they do not cheer for anything. What they do is simpler and more profound. They lower their phones. One by one, then in clusters, then in a wave that moves through the crowd the way a wave moves through water, not a signal, a permission. The permission to stop recording, the permission to just be present for this. The permission, after 15 years of watching gods above them and learning the posture of supplication, to simply stand on the earth and look at two figures on a lawn and understand that the hierarchy was always provisional. Jin-woo looks at Homelander, he looks at the cameras, he looks at the crowd. He has made his assessment. It was made 3 days ago in the basement safe house and confirmed 6 minutes ago when Homelander's expression showed him what he needed to see. The decision has been waiting for this moment, this exact configuration of audience and evidence and comprehension, because the decision is not only a tactical one, it is a historical one, and historical decisions have weight that extends beyond the moment of their execution into everything that follows. He turns back to Homelander. Jin-woo. In my world, when something was beyond saving, I ended it, cleanly, without ceremony. Homelander looks at him. Jin-woo. But there's something here that doesn't work the same way. You're not a dungeon boss, you're not a monarch. You're a person who was failed by every adult who ever had authority over you, manufactured into a weapon and given a mirror instead of a world. And the people watching need to see what that is before they can understand what comes next. He extends his right hand, palm down, the same gesture he gave the first shadow soldier in the alley. It means this is a choice point. Not mercy, not execution, a question. What will you be now that you know what you are? Homelander looks at the hand for a very long time. The cameras are running, the crowd is watching. Stan Edgar, in a car 3 blocks from the park, watching on a tablet, has gone completely still for the first time in 20 years. Then Homelander looks up at Jin-woo's face. And in his expression, behind the fear, behind the grief, behind the collapsed identity of everything he was built to be, there is something moving, something that has never had room to move before. It is the first honest thing he has ever done in front of a camera. He kneels, not in submission, not in defeat in any conventional sense. He kneels the way the shadow soldier knelt in the alley, in recognition. In the specific, difficult, earned acknowledgement of something that has been true for a long time and is only now being admitted. The world says this. The world will never fully recover from seeing this. In Seoul, a former S-rank hunter watches the broadcast in a bar with 7 other people, and nobody speaks for a long time, and then someone says, "Who is that?" and someone else says nobody knows exactly. In Washington, a subcommittee chair who has been trying to schedule a Vought oversight hearing for 3 years watches the footage of the blood on Homelander's temple and picks up a phone and calls someone she has not called in 2 years. In the boardroom of a major institutional investment firm, someone presses the sell button on a holding that has been generating returns for 11 consecutive years. In a hospital room in Queens, a woman whose son has been in a coma for 8 months following a soup-related incident that Vought settled out of court for a sum that required her silence watches the broadcast on her phone with tears running down her face and does not wipe them away. In Vought Tower, Stan Edgar watches the tablet and does not move, and the aide in the corner of his office cannot tell if he is thinking or if he has simply stopped, the way a machine stops when its operating premise has been removed. And in Central Park, on a lawn that is no longer recognizable, Jin-woo lowers his hand and steps back. He turns. He walks. He does not look at the cameras. He does not acknowledge the crowd. He does not make a statement, deliver a speech, or perform any of the gestures that this moment would conventionally require of someone who has just done what he did. He walks to the edge of the lawn, to the tree line, and the shadows there are deeper than they should be in afternoon light, and he steps into them, and he is gone. The cameras hold on the empty space where he was for 11 seconds. Then they pan back to the center of the lawn. Homelander is still there, still on his knees, looking at his hands. Nobody goes to him, not the NYPD at the cordon, not the Vought security units who are moving uncertainly at the lawn's perimeter, not the crowd, which does not rush the field as it might have at any other conclusion to any other event. They watch. And Homelander, for the first time in his life, is alone in the way that every human being is sometimes alone, genuinely, structurally alone in the middle of a crowd, with nothing between himself and the fact of his own existence except the question that Jin-woo left in the air when he turned and walked away. What will you be now that you know what you are? Butcher is sitting with a glass of something he isn't drinking. is at the table. Huey is standing at the window, watching the street below where 4 different news vans have been parked since mid-afternoon. Kimiko is in the corner. Nobody has said anything for 20 minutes. The television is on. The same footage has been cycling for 3 hours. The blood on the temple, the stagger, the expression, the kneeling, the silence of the crowd, the walk to the tree line. He didn't kill him. No. Nobody responds immediately. Butcher, he did something better. What's better than? Butcher, he made him real in front of everyone, made the whole bloody myth real, not a god, not a weapon, not a product, just a person, with fear in his eyes on camera in front of 300 million people. The pause. Butcher, you can recover from a defeat, you can't recover from being seen. Kimiko from the corner signs something at Jin-woo's shadow because the shadow is there, has been there since they came in, steady in the corner, watching with its faint violet points of cold light. She signs, will he come back? The shadow's eyes hold for a moment, then it inclines its head, the smallest acknowledgement, the vocabulary of something that doesn't need to announce what it already knows. It means yes. It means we're not finished. It means Stan Edgar is still in his tower. Edgar is alone. The aide was dismissed an hour ago. The phones have been forwarded. The room is quiet except for the television, which he has lowered to the lowest audible volume, just barely enough to hear the anchor's voice cycling through the same footage loop. He has been sitting in the same position since 2:33 p.m. He has not moved his tea. He has not checked his messages. He has not called Homelander, who is currently being transported from the park under Vought medical supervision, or Ashley, who is managing the communication infrastructure collapse, or his legal team, which is doing something with contracts and liability and force majeure clauses that he will review in the morning. He is thinking. Stan Edgar does not panic. He does not despair. He does not have the kind of emotional architecture that permits either as a primary response. What he has is the capacity for very clear analysis under pressure, and he is applying it now, and what the analysis is producing is something he has not produced in 20 years of heading the most powerful corporation in the world. A conclusion that has no actionable response attached to it. He does not know what Jin-woo is. He does not know where he comes from or what his constraints are or what he wants beyond the institutional dismantlement that has already been partially achieved. He does not know whether the choice not to kill Homelander was mercy, strategy, or something operating on a logic that his models cannot accommodate. He does not know. Stan Edgar is in his 60s. He has been in rooms with the most powerful people in the world. He has sat across from heads of state, military commanders, intelligence directors, the architects of wars both visible and invisible. He has never, not once, sat in a room and not known. He looks at the television, at the image of the young man walking toward the tree line, at the absence of any performance in the walk, at the ease of it, the complete, relaxed, total ease of something that has done what it came to do and is now simply going where it is going next. Edgar picks up his tea. It is ice cold. He drinks it anyway. Then he picks up his phone and dials a number that exists in no directory, that connects to no lays. TED organization that has been in his contacts for 11 years and has never been used. It answers on the second ring. Edgar, we have a situation that requires a different category of resource than we've previously deployed. I need you to find out everything about an individual who arrived via spatial anomaly over Manhattan approximately 3 weeks ago. Not what he can do. I know what he can do. I want to know what he wants, what he's afraid of, what he loves, those 3 things, tomorrow morning. He hangs up. He puts the phone down. He looks at the window, at the city below, at the lights of the empire he built and has held and will hold until the last possible moment, because that is what he does. That is the only thing he knows how to do, and the fact that the thing coming for him operates outside his models does not change the imperative. You hold until you can't, and then you adapt. Outside, somewhere in the city, in shadows that are deeper than the hour requires, in corners of buildings and beneath underpasses and in the long dark beneath the river, in all the places where light does not fully reach, something waits. Patient, expanded, growing. Watching. Acts I through I have done their work, the arrival, the infiltration, the dismantlement of the manufactured narrative, the confrontation that showed the world its own condition in 23 minutes of live footage. Now comes the part that most stories in this genre skip or rush, the aftermath. Because defeating a Homelander is not cleaning a world, humbling a false god is not the same as building something in the space the god occupied, and one corporation collapsing is not the same as the ideology it represented collapsing with it. Act IV is the hardest act to write because it refuses the easy ending. There is no triumphant score, no city cheering its savior, no clean moment of restoration. There is instead something rarer and more difficult, an honest reckoning with what the world actually needs, from the only person currently capable of giving it, and that person's decision about what that means. 5 phases, 1 outlier. The end of the story that began with a dungeon crawler stepping out of a dimensional rift over Times Square and looking around at a broken world with the calm, methodical gaze of someone taking inventory. He has finished the inventory, now comes the bill. An empire does not fall like a building. A building falls in seconds, the structural failure cascades, the supports give, the geometry collapses inward in a single comprehensible event. An empire falls like a glacier, enormous, grinding, with the appearance of slowness that conceals the absolute irresistibility of the process. Every day it looks almost like the glacier is still standing. Every day there is slightly less of it than there was the day before. Vought International begins losing structural integrity within 6 hours of the Central Park footage's global distribution. It is not a single crack. It is a simultaneous activation of every fracture the company has been accumulating for 30 years, all of them made suddenly, visibly load-bearing by the footage of Homelander on his knees in the grass. The financial architecture goes first because financial architecture is the most honest architecture in any empire. It is built entirely on confidence, and confidence is entirely dependent on narrative, and the Central Park footage is the end of the narrative. Vought International down 34%, AT market open, trading halted twice in first hour. 4 major institutional investors file simultaneous divestment notifications. Senate Oversight Committee announces emergency hearing. Compound V civilian exposure documentation subpoenaed. The hearing that has been scheduled, rescheduled, blocked, defunded, and legislatively suffocated for 11 consecutive years is now on the calendar for the following Tuesday. The senator who chairs the committee, who has, in previous testimony, described Vought as a vital partner in America's security infrastructure, is on every morning show by 7 a.m. the next day describing Vought as an institution that has betrayed the public trust at the most fundamental level. The supes scatter. Not all of them at once, not in coordinated defection. In the specific individual way that every managed asset begins to deviate when the management structure ceases to function, tentatively at first, watching the other assets for signals, then with increasing velocity as each defection makes the next one easier. The behavioral modification overlay in the compound V is still present in their biology, but behavior modification only holds when the threat that backs it up is credible. The credibility expired in Central Park. Edgar has not left the building. His personal security has been tripled, which he authorized himself at 2 a.m. on the night of the Central Park footage, and which tells anyone paying attention that the man who is never afraid of anything has updated his risk model. The office is exactly as it always is. The desk, the window, the city below, the herbal tea in its precise position to his right. The external presentation of the room has not yielded an inch to the catastrophe in progress. Edgar does not permit his environments to reflect crisis. The discipline of the controlled environment is the discipline of the controlled self. That is the architecture he has lived in for 40 years. Ashley enters without knocking, which she has never done before, which tells its own story. Ashley. The board is calling for your resignation, formally, in writing. It was delivered 11 minutes ago. Edgar does not look up from the window. Edgar, how many signatures? Ashley. 9 of 11. Edgar, which 2 didn't sign? Ashley. Hartley and Mercer, they want immunity deals before they do anything. Edgar nods unhurried. Edgar, tell the board I'll have a response by end of business. Tell Hartley and Mercer their immunity deals will be available if they cooperate fully with the committee. Tell the security detail that they can stand down on the East Wing. It's not the East Wing we need to be Watt. Hang. Ashley. Very carefully. Stan, the files from sublevel 4 are in congressional hands. The full civilian exposure documentation. 17 cities, 48 years. Edgar is quiet for a moment. Edgar, I know. Ashley. There is no containing this. Edgar, I know that too. Another silence. In the window glass, his reflection looks at him, impeccable, composed, the same face that has occupied this office for 2 decades, the same face that has never flinched at anything until now, and even now it isn't flinching. It is doing something different and harder than flinching. It is accepting. Edgar, it was always going to end. Institutions built on a lie don't have a stable equilibrium. They have a trajectory, and the trajectory was always terminal. I just thought I could control the timing. He turns from the window. For the first time in Ashley's 11 years working for him, he looks tired. Edgar, go home, Ashley. What comes next? You don't need to be in this building for it. She looks at him for a long moment, then she puts the papers on the edge of his desk, and she leaves. Edgar is alone. He looks at the papers, then at the tea, then at the city. Outside, in the shadow that falls across the east face of Vought Tower, where the morning sun does not yet reach, something is watching. Patient and unhurried, it has been watching for 3 days. It is waiting for Edgar to make his next move. Nature abhors a vacuum, power structures abhor it more. For 11 years, Vaught's registered supe monopoly, the contractual and legal and extralegal machinery that ensured no enhanced individual operated at significant scale without Vaught's management, has been the ceiling above every ambition that existed in the enhanced community's shadow tier. The ones who didn't want cameras, the ones who found corporate management inconvenient, the ones who looked at the registered pathway and made a different calculation. They have been waiting, not organized, scattered, individual, entrepreneurial in the specific way that criminals become entrepreneurial when the market structure above them is stable and inaccessible. They have been occupying their own niches, running their own operations at scales that stayed below Vought's threshold of intervention. The threshold is gone. Chicago, within 48 hours of the Vought stock halt, a supe who goes by the designation STONHMMER and whose abilities center on density manipulation. He can increase the density of any object he touches to approximately 40 times its natural mass, takes control of 3 blocks of the south side with a directness and a finality that reflects someone who has been waiting for exactly this window for a very long time. He does not make speeches. He does not issue demands. He simply walks into a space, demonstrates what he is capable of, and the space becomes his. In Lowe's Angels, a woman who the Vought database lists as a failed supe program washout, the enhancement didn't take in the expected ways. She can't fly or generate energy or hit things hard, has been developing in the years since her program exit a precision telekinesis that operates on the neurological rather than physical register. She cannot move objects. She can move the parts of the brain that process fear. In the power vacuum, this turns out to be enough. In Houston, 3 separate enhanced individuals form a territorial coalition in the same 48-hour window, and the coalition is more sophisticated than it should be for 3 people who have never met, which suggests pre-existing communication infrastructure that was waiting for this moment to activate. Jin-woo watches all of this through the Shadow Network. His shadow soldiers are distributed across 7 major American cities, not in force, not in confrontational deployment, but in coverage. In the same way that a dungeon crawler surveys a new floor before clearing it, he has mapped the post-Vought landscape with the patient thoroughness that has defined every phase of his presence in this world. He knows about Stonehammer. He knows about the Lowe's Angels' neurological telekinetic. He knows about the Houston Coalition and has identified the communication node they're operating through. He has also identified 3 supes who are doing something different. 3 enhanced individuals in Denver, Baltimore, and Portland who, in the absence of Vought's control architecture, have independently moved toward the civilian population not as territory but as protection, without cameras, without branding, without contracts, appearing at the site of a building fire, stopping a freeway collision before it cascades. One of them sitting outside a school in Baltimore that received a credible threat, not because anyone asked, but because the threat was credible and the school was there. These 3 he watches with particular attention. Because these 3 are the answer to the question the world is going to need ends. What does an enhanced human look like when the corporate management is gone and the behavioral modification overlay is gone and the financial incentive is gone and what's left is the person? These 3 are the answer, or they are the beginning of the answer, and he files them carefully. System Shadow Network coverage at 73% of major metropolitan areas. Hostile enhanced activity detected in 14 locations. Civilian protection activity detected in 3 locations. Conflict escalation risk elevated but non-critical in 11 locations. Critical escalation detected. Chicago Stonehammer perimeter expanding at 3 block per day rate. Estimated 96-hour threshold before major civilian casualty event. Host directive required on Chicago engagement timeline. Jin-woo reads this and marks Chicago for priority. But first, Edgar has made his move. The thing Edgar does with his 1 remaining card is precise and elegant and exactly what Jin-woo expected him to do, because a man who has been this good at this for this long does not become bad at it simply because his institution is collapsing. He cooperates fully, immediately, with every investigative body simultaneously. He does not wait to be subpoenaed. He does not negotiate terms. He presents himself to the Senate Committee, to the FBI, to the International Investigative Commission that has been established in the 3 days since Central Park, and he begins talking. All of it, the civilian dosage programs, the behavioral modification designs, the contractual coercion of registered supes, the extralegal operations, the names, the dates, the facilities, the decision chains. 40 years of Vought's most protected information, delivered by the man who built most of it, in a format that legal teams will be parsing for the next decade. What he is doing, and Jin-woo, watching through the shadow at the edge of the legal office, recognizes it with cold clarity, is the most sophisticated surviving move available to him. He is making himself indispensable to the prosecution. He is ensuring that the institution of Vought dies, but that the man who ran Vought becomes the most important cooperating witness in one of the largest criminal cases in American history, which carries its own form of institutional protection, not from the law, but from anything that might remove him before the law is finished with him. He is surviving in the only way left to him. Jin-woo watches Edgar's testimony feed through a shadow soldier's perception and acknowledges it with the same internal register he applies to a dungeon boss who reveals an unexpected secondary ability at 20% health. Not admiration exactly, recognition. Jin-woo. That's the last move. He pulls the shadow back. Edgar is now the law's problem, which is appropriate, and the law is adequate to the task. Chicago is waiting. The conversation has been coming since Central Park. Butcher has been delaying it in the specific way he delays things he knows are necessary but not yet structurally complete, letting the other components of the situation develop so that when the conversation happens it is happening with full information rather than with the incomplete data that would lead to an incomplete resolution. He waits until the night when Jin-woo is sitting alone at the table with tea. He is not drinking and the shadow soldiers are distributed across their network and the safe house is quiet. Then he sits across from him. No preamble, no setup. Butcher, tell me why you're not Homelander. Jin-woo looks at him. Butcher, not the power level, not the history, the actual argument, because from where I'm standing, I've replaced one unaccountable being with absolute power over this situation with another one. And I've been spending 6 weeks telling myself there's a difference, and I need you to make that argument for me, because the one I've been making in my own head is starting to sound like the thing I always said was rubbish when other people made it. Butcher, which is, trust me, I'm one of the good ones. A long pause. Jin-woo does not answer immediately. He turns this over with the same methodical honesty he applies to every problem. Jin-woo, that's the right question. Butcher, yeah, it is. Jin-woo, Homelander couldn't leave, that's the first answer. He was built for this world. His entire identity is this world, the cameras, the approval, the being the thing that's above everything. If you took him out of this world, there'd be nothing. He would be nothing. His power and his need for validation are the same structure. He can't exist without both of them operating simultaneously. Butcher watches him. Jin-woo, I can leave. I could have left the first day. The dimensional distortion that brought me here, I could have found a way back within the first week. The system had pathways mapped by day 4. Butcher, so why didn't you? Jin-woo, because the world was broken, and I know what broken looks like, and I know. The specific kind of broken where fixing it requires something that the broken thing can't generate from within itself. Not because the people in it are inadequate, but because the structure that's hurting them is too embedded in the infrastructure of the world they live in for them to reach the root of it from inside. Butcher doesn't respond, but something shifts in his expression. Jin-woo, you've been fighting this for years. You had the right analysis from the beginning that the problem is the institution, not the individual supes. But you couldn't get to the institution because every time you moved against it, it used its supes to push you back. You were contained. The world was contained, not because the people in it weren't capable, but because the cap on what was possible had been enforced by something they couldn't match. Jin-woo, I removed the cap. That's different from replacing it. Butcher sits with this. Butcher, and when you're gone, when you're done removing the cap and you've gone back to wherever you came from, what stops the next Vought? What stops the next Homelander? Jin-woo, nothing permanent, the same things that stopped it being as bad as it was before Vought turned it into what it became. People, laws, other people watching the people with the laws, institutions that haven't been corrupted yet, holding the ones that are trying to be. Butcher, that's not a very satisfying answer. Jin-woo, no it isn't. A beat. Jin-woo, but it's the correct one. A world that requires an external force to stay healthy is a world that hasn't actually recovered. I can clean it, I can't heal it, that's yours. Butcher looks at him for a very long time. Then he nods, the specific, fractional, hard-won nod of a man who has been persuaded of something he did not want to be persuaded of, which is the most genuine form of persuasion. Butcher, quietly, and you're sure you're not just telling me what I need to hear to let you finish the job? Jin-woo meets his eyes, and in his expression, not warm, not performed, entirely direct and entirely without agenda, is the answer. Jin-woo, I'm sure because I don't need your permission. The honesty of that lands exactly the way it should, not as a threat, as a fact. The most unambiguous statement a person can make about their actual relationship to power is the acknowledgement that they don't require the cooperation of the person they're talking to, and then proceeding to offer it anyway, as the choice it actually is. Butcher makes a sound that is the closest thing to a laugh he's produced since the conversation started. Butcher. Right then, finish the job. Homelander is here not as a prisoner exactly. No facility in this world has been built to hold him against his genuine will, but as something more complex and more relevant, as a man who has nowhere else to go. His penthouse is a crime scene under federal review. His contract with Vought is void by virtue of Vaught's criminal dissolution. His public identity, the one he's had since he was old enough to understand he had an identity, is in the process of being disassembled by 700 journalists across 14 countries who now have the sublevel 4 files and are working through the implications. He is sitting in a room with a reinforced concrete floor and walls and no windows and a single overhead light. He has been offered food and declined it. He has been offered legal representation and said nothing. The federal agents outside the room have been told that under no circumstances are they to escalate, to approach with any form of threat or coercive instrument, to do anything at all that reads as aggression, because every analyst who has reviewed the Central Park footage has reached the same conclusion about what happens when Homelander is cornered. The shadow comes through the wall at 1:47 a.m. Not through the door, through the wall, the way water comes through old stone, not breaking it, passing through the boundary between solid and dark, existing in the wall and then in the room, coalescing into Jin-woo, who stands against the east wall with the same quality of presence he has carried since Times Square. An absence of performance, a pure fact of being somewhere. Homelander looks at him. He has been in this room for 31 hours, without the cameras, without the approval architecture, without the management of Vaught's communications infrastructure telling him who he is and who he's performing it for. Homelander in a room looks different than Homelander in the world. Smaller in some irrelevant physical dimension, but more present in every other way, as if the removal of the performance has left behind whatever exists beneath it, and what exists beneath it is stranger and more human and more painful than anything the performance was allowed to show. Jin-woo studies him with the same methodical attention he brings to everything. Homelander. Are you here to finish it? Jin-woo. I'm here to talk. Homelander. You came through the wall to talk. Jin-woo. The door was guarded. A silence. Homelander's eyes track him around the room, not with the targeting precision of a threat assessment, with something more basic. Curiosity. The curiosity of someone who has never encountered anything like what they are looking at and has spent 31 hours in a concrete room with no one to perform for, which has created, for the first time in his life, the space to be actually curious. Homelander. Why didn't you kill me? Jin-woo. Because you have a choice to make, and I didn't want to make it for you. Homelander. What choice? Jin-woo. Whether you're the thing they made, or whether you're what you would have been if they hadn't made you into the thing they made. Homelander is quiet. Something moves in his face, the slow geological movement of a tectonic thing, something deep and structural shifting beneath the surface. Homelander. You think there's something else, under it, under all of. Jin-woo. I know there is, I saw it in Central Park. Homelander. I was afraid that's not. Jin-woo. Not the fear earlier when you looked at your hands. A beat. Homelander's jaw tightens. His hands are on the table and he looks at them now, the same gesture, the involuntary recall of a moment he perhaps did not realize had been observed. Jin-woo. You looked at your own hands, and for a second, before the anger came back and covered it, you looked like someone who didn't recognize them. Like someone who was wondering what they would have done with them if they'd been allowed to find out. The silence that follows is different from the silences in this room before it. It is not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. It is the silence of someone for whom what has been said has landed in a place that hasn't been reached by anything in a very long time. Homelander. Very quietly. I was 6 years old. Jen will. I know. HOMELANDR. When they started, I was 6 years old and they put me in a room and they told me what I was, and I believed them because I was 6 and they were the only people I had, and I've believed them ever since because if I stopped believing them, there was nothing else. A long pause. HOMELANDR. There was never anything else. Jin-woo looks at him, and in his expression, not compassion in the soft performed sense, but the harder, more honest thing that looks like compassion when it's real, is the acknowledgement of what has just been said, held fully, without dismissal, and without inflation. Jen will. There can be if you choose it. The law will require things of you. The committee, the testimony, the accountability. Those are not negotiable, and you should not try to make them negotiable. But after them, there is the question of who you are when the performance is gone and the management is gone and the compound is metabolized and all that's left is a person with very unusual abilities trying to figure out what to do with them. Jen will. That is a question you have never been allowed to ask. I'm telling you now, ask it. Homelander looks at him for a long time. HOMELANDR. Will it be enough just being a person? Jen will. I don't know, I had to find out, so will you. He stands, turns, walks to the wall. HOMELANDR. You're just going to leave me here. Jen will. Without turning back. The agents outside are not a danger to you. You know that. Stay, answer the questions, do the work. He steps into the wall and is gone. Homelander sits in the room for a very long time. The overhead light hums. The concrete floor is cold under his feet. Eventually, he reaches across the table and presses the call button. When the agent appears in the doorway, Homelander looks at them, not with the expression from the press conferences, not with the laser-targeting precision of a threat assessment, not with the performed warmth of a Vought media event. With the expression of someone who is figuring out who they are. HOMELANDR. I'd like to speak with the committee tonight if they're available. Chicago. He goes to Chicago first because the clock is real and Stonehammer is real, and the 47,000 people in the blocks around his expanding perimeter are real. What happens in Chicago is not a fight, it is a demonstration. Jin-woo appears at the edge of Stonehammer's claimed territory at 3 a.m. when the streets are empty of civilians. He does not announce himself, he does not issue an ultimatum. He walks into the territory and stands at its center and waits, and the shadow soldiers that materialize around him, 17 of them, standing in the darkness at the perimeter of the space, visible only as the presence of violet eyes in the shadows between buildings, are not an attack. They are a message. The message is, I can do this the easy way. Stonehammer comes out, looks at the shadow soldiers, looks at Jin-woo, looks at the shadow soldiers again. STONHMMER. You're the one from Central Park. Jen will. Yes. STONHMMER. What are you offering? Jen will. Nothing, I'm not here to offer you anything. I'm here to tell you that the 3 blocks you've taken go back to the people who live on them, and then you leave. STONHMMER. And if I don't? Jin-woo looks at him, just looks at him. The violet eyes of 17 shadow soldiers hold steady in the surrounding darkness. Jen will. You've seen the footage. Stonehammer has seen the footage. He has watched it 7 times. He is a practical man and he makes a practical calculation and he is gone by morning. Los Angeles, Houston, 6 more locations across the country over the following 36 hours, each one different in its specifics and identical in its underlying structure. Jin-woo arrives, the deterrence of what he is makes its point, the threat recalculates. Not all of them yield to deterrence. 3 require direct intervention, brief, precise, sufficient. The 3 supes who chose to pursue civilian harm when a proportional alternative was offered them receive a proportional response. 2 of those 3 join the Shadow Army. And then, in the hours after the sweep is complete, Jin-woo does the last thing on the list. The thing he has been building towards since he watched the Vought media team construct the foreign terror meta narrative in the 23 hours after he arrived. He goes to the 3 supes who were protecting their communities. The supe in Baltimore, a woman in her mid-30s who has been operating under the designation Vigil, whose power is enhanced perception in multiple spectra, who can see through walls and across spectrum distances that make conventional surveillance obsolete, is sitting in a folding chair in the back room of a community center when Jin-woo arrives through the fire exit that was not locked. She saw him coming from 3 blocks away. She is the only person he has encountered in this world who looked at his approach and did not move. She just sat and waited for him to come in.
Vigil, I figured you'd get here eventually.
Jin-woo, you've been outside that school for 9 days.
Vigil,
the threat hasn't been neutralized yet.
Jin-woo,
it will be by tomorrow morning. The person responsible is in federal custody. I wanted you to know. A pause. Vigil processes this, then.
Vigil, why, Jin-woo?
Because you've been here 9 days and no one told you, and you stayed anyway. You deserve the information. She looks at him. Her enhanced perception is reading things about him that no other person in this world has had the capacity to fully read: the depth of the shadow architecture, the residual mana signature that this world cannot produce naturally, the specific quality of something that has been through death and come back different. She processes all of it and arrives at a conclusion.
Vigil, you're leaving. Jin-woo,
yes.
Vigil, what happens after?
Jin-woo, after is yours. The committee is establishing a registration framework that isn't Vought. The International Commission has been involved. It won't be perfect. It will be better than what it was. She nods, slow and careful.
Vigil, and Homelander.
Jin-woo, he's talking to the committee. Whether it's enough, whether what comes after is enough, that's up to him, and up to the people deciding what accountability requires.
Vigil, that's a very uncertain answer.
Jin-woo, yes, most honest answers are. He turns to go. At the fire exit he stops.
Jin-woo,
the school will be fine. What you've been doing, the way you've been doing it, that matters. Keep going.
He leaves.
Vigil sits in the folding chair for a long time after. The community center is quiet. Outside, the school is dark and closed for the evening, and the street beyond it is ordinary and peaceful in the way that ordinary and peaceful are only fully appreciated by people who have been watching carefully to protect them.
She thinks about what he said.
She decides to go home and sleep for the first time in 9 days, and then come back in the morning. He has chosen a location that has no significance, not Times Square where he arrived, not Central Park where the confrontation happened, not anywhere that the cameras know to watch or the crowd knows to gather. A narrow alley between 2 midtown buildings, a streetlight at one end, the faint sound of a garbage truck somewhere 4 blocks away, cold air carrying the particular New York smell of concrete and food carts and recent rain.
Ordinary, deliberately.
He stands at the center of the alley. The dimensional rift is already forming. He felt the pathway home open 3 hours ago, the system calculating the spatial coordinates required to reverse the distortion that brought him here. It flickers at the alley's far end, a shimmer of violet black at the edge of the dumpster's shadow, patient and waiting.
Before it, he has something to do first.
Jin-woo closes his eyes.
He enters the system interface in the way he has been doing for years, that interior.
Turning that particular quality of attention directed not outward but inward, toward the architecture of the thing that has been with him since the double dungeon, since the death that was not quite a death and the rebirth that was not quite a rebirth. The system is here. It has always been here, this world's incomprehension of its origin notwithstanding. It adapted, it cataloged, it designed the combat protocols for Homelander. It mapped the Shadow Network's coverage. It calculated the Chicago timeline and the Lowe's Angel's neurological threat profile and every other variable in the 11 days of this operation. It has been, as it has always been, the most powerful tool anyone in any world has ever possessed.
He looks at it.
System host returning to origin realm. Dimensional rift stable at current location. Departure window 14 minutes. All outstanding objectives completed. Shadow Army, 23 active soldiers transferred to passive monitoring protocol. All high-threat enhanced individuals neutralized or deterred. Institutional accountability mechanisms active and functional. This realm is stable within acceptable parameters.
He reads this.
Then below the status update, below the departure window countdown, below the stable parameters confirmation. He navigates to a menu the system has never shown him before and that he has never previously sought out, because he never previously knew what he would do with it if he found it. A menu that appears when the host specifically seeks it, and that contains one function. System warning, external realm system suspension protocol accessed. This function will suspend all system operations within the current realm designation. Shadow Army will become autonomous at last issued directive. Leveling, quest allocation, stat modification, and skill acquisition functions will be inactive within this realm. This action is irreversible without host re-entry to this realm. Confirm suspension. He reads it twice. He has been thinking about this since the Compound V laboratory. Since he stood in sublevel 4 and held the vial and felt the system parse the dependency architecture, the behavioral modification overlay, the loyalty pathway pharmaceutical design, the ownership of a human being through the manipulation of their own biology. He has been thinking about what it means to leave behind in this world a power structure that operates without accountability or limitation or the possibility of check. He has been thinking about Butcher's question. Is he just a stronger Homelander? The argument he gave Butcher was honest and he stands behind it, but arguments, however honest, are not the same thing as proof. Arguments can be made in bad faith. Arguments can be genuine convictions that turn out in practice to be insufficient. The difference between a person who believes they are trustworthy and a person who actually is trustworthy is not the quality of their self-assessment. It is the quality of what they do when they have the capability to take more and choose not to. He made Homelander feel mortality. He showed the world what the god really was. He removed the institutional infrastructure of the company that manufactured the gods. He cleaned the dungeon. Now he is going to prove something, not to the world will never know this happened, not to Butcher, who would appreciate it and whose appreciation is not what this is about, not to the system, which is not capable of being impressed by what it is being asked to do. To himself, as the only witness who matters. He confirms. System external realm system suspension confirmed. All leveling functions suspended in realm designation unknown 01. Shadow Army transferred to autonomous patrol protocol. Passive monitoring maintained. Host capabilities in this realm. Baseline Monarch level fixed. No further advancement. No further quest generation. No further system interaction within unknown 01. This designation is now closed. The system interface goes quiet. Not dark, it is still there, still accessible, still functional in his home world. But in this world, in the alley off 5th Avenue in the city that was broken and is now beginning, carefully and imperfectly, to be less broken, in this world, the thing that has made him the most powerful being anyone in it has ever encountered is no longer growing. He cannot level here anymore. The Shadow Army will remain, will do its work, will protect the communities it has been assigned, but it will not expand, and it will not receive direction from him once he leaves, and it will eventually, over the course of years, fade as the shadows of this world's own generation return to the ordinary darkness from which he called them. He has left a deterrence, not a reign. He has left a memory, not a monument. He opens his eyes. The rift is waiting, the shimmer of it is patient in the dark, violet black against the dumpster's shadow, the familiar beautiful. Wrongness of a boundary between what is and what lies beyond it. He has stepped through gates like this his entire career. He has cleared dungeons beyond counting. He has faced things that no one in his world or this one could fully articulate, and he has come back from each of them changed in the specific way that only things which have been tested to their limit and found something on the other side of the limit can be changed. He looks at the alley, at the ordinary city around it, at the streetlight at one end and the darkness at the other, and the garbage truck sound 4 blocks away, and the cold air carrying its ordinary city smells. He looks at his hands. Then he walks through. The rift closes behind him, the alley is empty, the streetlight continues. The garbage truck turns the corner and rumbles past, and the driver, who has been on the same route for 11 years and has seen many strange things in Midtown at 3 a.m., glances at the alley as he passes and sees nothing unusual. The city breathes. It is doing so differently than it was 11 days ago. Not better yet, the committee hearings are going to last 18 months, and the Compound V civilian exposure litigation will run for decades, and the new supe registration framework will be contested at every level of government, and the cultural processing of what it means to live in a world where the gods were always products will take at least a generation. But differently. The three supes who protect their communities do so again in the morning. Vigil goes back to Baltimore. The Denver supe, who has never had a registered name, spends a Tuesday afternoon helping clear debris from a flooded neighborhood in northeast Denver with no camera present and refuses politely when a resident tries to film him. The Portland supe sits with a woman who is having a mental health crisis on a bridge at 2 a.m. and stays until the ambulance comes, not because she was asked, but because she was there. In the federal hearing room, Homelander testifies for the third consecutive day. His voice is flat and precise and honest in the way of someone who has discovered that honesty is exhausting and has decided to be exhausted rather than the alternative. The committee chair, who expected performance and rehearsal, finds herself unprepared for the specificity of what he is giving them. Dates, names, directives, the complete architecture of 15 years of managed violence delivered without affect or mitigation. The testimony of someone who has decided that what comes after the truth is the only thing left worth waiting for. In the shadow of the city, in the long dark under the rivers, in the corners of parking structures and the alleyways that receive no direct sun, 23 shadow soldiers stand their watch. Their violet eyes are the only evidence of their presence. They do not expand. They do not intervene in anything below the threshold of acute threat. They are, in the most honest description available, a reminder of what happened, of the cost of what happened. Of the fact that somewhere, in a world no one in this world knows how to reach, something that came here because the world needed correction and left because it was done, is watching what this world chooses to do with what it was given. Whether it is watching or not, the world does not know. But it acts as if it might be. Which is, of all the things Jin-woo left behind, the most important. Not the shadow army, not the dismantled corporation, not the broken god in the hearing room doing the hardest work of his life. The possibility. The possibility introduced into the population's understanding of the world that unaccountable power is not permanent, that it can be answered, that the gods were never gods and the ceiling was never the sky. That somewhere above the ceiling, above the manufactured apex, above the compound-granted divinity, above the brand and the narrative and the quarterly earnings report, there are things that were built by cost and loss and choice, things that cannot be owned or managed or packaged, things that know the difference between power that was given and power that was earned. And that those things, when the world is broken enough, will come through the dimensional distortion over Times Square and look around at what was done and get to work. Not to stay, not to rule, to correct and to leave, and to trust that the world they corrected is capable of being better than the world they found. Butcher is sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea he is actually drinking. The television is on news coverage of the committee hearings, the Vought dissolution proceedings, a live shot of the site where the Central Park confrontation happened 11 days ago, which has become something the city hasn't decided how to categorize yet. Not a memorial, not a tourist attraction. People go there and stand in it and look at the torn ground and the impression of the fight still visible in the earth, and they are quiet in the specific way people are quiet when they're in the presence of something they're still processing. Huey comes into the kitchen, pours coffee, sits across from Butcher. Chai. He's gone. Butcher. Yeah. The pause. Chai. Is that good or bad? Butcher thinks about this for a moment, a real moment, not a rhetorical pause. Butcher. Quietly. It's neither, it's how it was always supposed to work. Chai. What do you mean? Butcher. Someone comes in, does the thing that needed doing, and leaves it to the people who live here to build what comes next, which is either going to be better or worse depending entirely on what we do with it. Huey considers this. That puts a lot of pressure on us. Butcher. Yeah, it does. He picks up his tea, drinks it. The television shows the committee hearing room. Homelander's voice, flat and precise and honest, continues. Outside the window, the city moves. The shadow in the corner of the safe house, which has been there off and on for 11 days, is gone. The corner is just a corner now. Just a corner, just a room. Just a city doing the difficult, imperfect, never-finished work of being a city where people live and choose, badly and then better, and then worse, and then better again, in the way that people always have and presumably always will, in the beautiful, grinding, uncertain continuity of a world that was never perfect and is not lost.